This is the President. Hello, this is the President of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. They're telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, see me.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, did you hear that? Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up.
Wait, see me. Wait, see me. Wait, see me.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Ground Zero coming to you live tonight from News Radio 101 KXL in Portland, Oregon. And we're breaking a news story tonight. In fact, this is the first time I've been able to do this in a long time. Usually when I'm doing it once a week, I can wait, but not tonight. There's something happening. I didn't know what was going to happen. In fact, when I gave issue as to whether or not I was going to post this story, my website was shut down. Once again, got hit either with some sort of a denial of service or people rushed to the website, which crashed the server. It should be up within the next 30 minutes or so, hopefully. The numbers to call tonight are 503-417-9595. That's 503-417-9KXL or 1-877-733-1011. That's 503-73... Okay, let's try that again. That's 1-877-733-1011. Got the numbers all confused. I just rushed into the studio with this story. And I am calling upon a friend of mine to come on the air tonight who has a major web show, MediaMonarchy.com. Media Monarchy, James Evan Pilato, who's been on this program before, and we're going to go right to him since this is breaking. James, welcome to the program again.
Thanks so much for having me, Clyde.
Now, the reason why it's just a confusing type of atmosphere tonight on the show. My website's down, everything's going crazy. I was going to delay the show until the 16th, maybe 15th, the end of the week, but I couldn't because I just got word that Anonymous, the group that is this web group, is going to, I guess, do something really drastic or strange. It's called Operation Bohemian Grove, and it starts today. Now, what exactly do you have on this matter? What's going on?
concerning Anonymous, folks may know them as the group sort of connected to WikiLeaks, and you'll see them usually don the sort of Guy Fawkes mask that was made popular in the V for Vendetta film. Anonymous has typically, or at least up until this point, as to my knowledge, generally only done web-based sort of hack attacks, or at least operations drawing attention to, the defunding of WikiLeaks. They were connected to, when Amazon and Visa and all those guys pulled, their service, because of course Amazon owns tons of web server space, connected to, Bradley Manning and WikiLeaks and all of those things. The thing that broke today, and what it's referred to as, and you can go on Twitter right now and do hashtag Operation Bohemian Grove, and Anonymous has essentially put the call out to Anonymous members, as well as anybody else that would be in the area, of the California Redwoods to go and draw attention and protest the 133rd Annual Secret Enclave of the world's most powerful elite in banking, military, government, media, schools, you name it. They meet for 2 weeks in July of every year in the beautiful California Redwoods, and it's called the Bohemian Grove, and it is put on by the Bohemian Club. And it was started in 1878, and it goes on to this day, and if you're a woman, no luck. Of course, it's a man-only event. And this is going on as our elites basically will sneak away and go to these meetings.
Right.
Folks may be familiar with the Bilderberg Group. And, of course, back in 2008, folks may remember when candidate Barack Obama tricked his press corps into staying on the plane and locked them in and didn't tell them that Obama wasn't aboard until they took off. So he, as well as Hillary Clinton, his quote-unquote opponent, could sneak away to the secretive Bilderberg meeting that was going on in Chantilly, Virginia at the time. This is a similar type of thing where the elites get together to essentially discuss policy and to set ideals in motion. And when you look at most of the folks and what they're involved in, you can basically say they're working on a one-world agenda, a one-world government agenda.
Exactly. It's interesting that Anonymous is calling this out, and Anonymous is also responsible for a lot of hacks that go on. I worry that maybe my site was targeted. 4chan once took over my chat room because I was speaking of Anonymous as well, and now I'm once again announcing an Anonymous thing. Perhaps Anonymous got word of it, and now they're flooding my website, and I'm worried that I'm trying to get it back up. I've talked with Olaf in Northern California. It's just it was a breaking news story. I put out the word on several websites that I was going to be talking about this tonight, bringing you on as well, and it turned out to probably be to my disadvantage having the website go down, but MediaMonarchy.blogspot.com is up, and the Bohemian Grove story is now on your website, and that's why I'm bringing you on, because of your knowledge of Bohemian Grove and what exactly it is. And I'm sure a lot of the audience doesn't know that this goes on, and a lot of things that go on there are not as much like the Bilderberg show as it is the rituals that go on there, the debauchery that goes on there, a number of things that go on there that we need to inform the audience about. And this is probably why Anonymous has decided, along with other groups, I'm sure, I know that Anthony J. Hilder is another one, I haven't been able to get a hold of him either, who is also going to be there, who is also being targeted for his protests there. It's just a strange and weird situation that people are getting all uptight about this meeting as opposed to other meetings. I mean, they've done this for years. People have known they've done this. Alex Jones, who's a well-known conspiracy theorist, conspiracy reporter, actually infiltrated the Bohemian Club, even though it's off limits to most people. He was able to get a camera crew in there and get most of the ritual that they do there on film. Could you give us just a little bit of, background as to what exactly happens at the Bohemian Grove and how it begins?
Well, first let me just touch on what you were saying about the website. I'd like to be hopeful and think that it's the attention being drawn to it, as this all really seemed to launch today, July 13th. And again, you just go search July 13th, Operation Bohemian Grove, and you'll find all this exploding on this day that we're talking. I would think that if your site had been targeted with any kind of DDoS attack or something, that those guys they'll usually put up a new front saying, ha ha ha, you've been hacked by LulzSec or Anonymous or something like that. All I got from groundzeromedia.org as I was getting my ducks in a row here before the show is it just wouldn't load, and ultimately, the message says maybe the server's overloaded, try again later. So hopefully it's just attention. Now, thanks to the fine folks at Google, MediaMonarchy.com is up and operating, and if you go there right now, you can see the article that comes from a California newspaper, and I want to read some of this for you because I think giving the just general mainstream media take will at least let people in on what is sort of the official story of things. Then, of course, you do the research for yourself. I provide tons of links and supplemental information, YouTube videos, all those kind of things for people to go check this out for themselves. This comes from the Press Democrat, gearing up at the Bohemian Grove. San Francisco Giants boss Bill Newcomb and Vaughn Walker, the retired federal judge who threw out Proposition 8, will be among the featured speakers at the Bohemian Grove encampment of rich and powerful men beginning Friday, July 15th in Monterey, California. Also scheduled to present lakeside talks during the 17-day Bohemian Grove retreat are Daniel Yergin, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author and energy expert, Willie Smith, conservationist and defender of Borneo's orangutans, and former Secretaries of State George Shultz and James Baker. The talks, presented beside a small lake ringed by towering redwoods, are a daily highlight of the summer encampment held by the San Francisco-based Bohemian Club and dating back to 1878. Like everything else that transpires within the Bohemians' 2,700-acre enclave along the Russian River, the talks are secret. To the chagrin of critics who contend, the plutocrats and politicians are either plotting the future of the free world, engaging in nefarious ceremonies, or both. Nothing like that actually happens, according to Matt Aguero, the club's general manager.
Of course they deny it.
It's a group of guys out in the woods having a good time, end quote.
Right.
Even the protesters who used to collect at the Grove's gate have pretty much given up, although there have been recent internet rumblings of such an effort.
Oh.
And Aguero says it wouldn't surprise me to see a few people show up. The article goes on and gets into some of the folks that go there, and we can get into that further because anything that has George Bush Sr. and members of the Grateful Dead hanging out together should really kind of, I think, raise your eyebrows and raise your ears.
Well, it's fascinating to know that they're using a lot of propaganda and a lot of I guess you could say PR to change how people feel about this meeting because of the centerpiece, which is the cremation of care ceremony, which we'll get into as well. And talk more about that. Tonight on Ground Zero, we are breaking a story, Operation Bohemian Grove, which is a call out to people to protest the Bohemian Grove gathering that's going to be happening at the end of the week. This just broke today. Anonymous, a group who symbolizes themselves with the Guy Fawkes masks from the movie V for Vendetta, are being told to gather there with their Guy Fawkes masks on, and they are going to block Bohemian Road and Railroad Avenue. The areas there where you can get in, they want to block the entire area from these officials from going in. It may cause a riot or a problem there. We're keeping an eye on this, but we're trying to get in touch with as many people as possible to find out exactly what's going on. By the way, just got word, the Ground Zero website is back up online, groundzeromedia.org. We'll be back with more. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
Everyone is in on the secrets, and big things are being planned. Call Clyde Lewis now. Ground Zero.
The website at Ground Zero is up now, groundzeromedia.org. Chat room is open, too, if you'd like to participate in chat. Some of you have probably gone away because we were down. We were going to report, and we are reporting, a group called Anonymous, who's an online group. A lot of people consider them the trolls of the Internet, who hack into sites and also raise all kinds of havoc because of the WikiLeaks scandals. They are planning a mission. They called all their people to actually go to Northern California to block the roads and to prepare for an all-out protest of the gathering of the elite, and this is the presidents, the bankers, all these people who are well known, even your leaders who go there for a little R&R, according to what the papers tell you. They're going to protest this because of something that goes on there called the cremation of care. Now, this is, I think, one way to open up, even at a massive scale, the truth about what goes on at Bohemian Grove. And to join me tonight, just for a little while, to keep us informed on this, is the host of MediaMonarchy.com, the show Media Monarchy, and also works with James Corbett of the Corbett Report. I have with me James Evan Pilato. Welcome back to Ground Zero.
Thanks again, man.
Like I said, a lot of people are unaware of Bohemian Grove and unaware of some of the history of Bohemian Grove. There are some things, you were saying they make policy there. What kind of well-known policies have they made at Bohemian Grove before?
Well, let me preface all of this by saying that whether I think we're talking about the Bohemian Grove or the events of 9/11 or JFK or the Iraq War or any of these sort of things that fall under the shroud of the derisive term conspiracy theory, which of course didn't really exist until 97 after the film came out. And that term is used to, of course, end debate, and you're a nut job if you talk about these things. I think regardless of which of those things we're talking about, you can look at them at a number of different levels. So even if you believe the official story of 9/11, that, the hijackers piloted the planes and it was all exactly how they said it, there are too many questions that don't fit. And you ultimately know that, well, we funded and trained what became Al-Qaeda in the late 70s to fight the Soviets. So on any number of levels, there's even just the official line, that even the official line stinks. And it's only a matter of your own sort of inquisitive nature and whether or not you want to stop people lying to you all the time, let alone, paying for people to lie to you all the time, whether, whatever media form that may take.
Mm-hmm.
You can start to dig into the deeper stories. So on the surface, the Bohemian Grove is a 2-week meeting in California where all males get together and have a good time, as we heard in that report I was citing in the previous segment from the Press Democrat. It's just guys in the woods having a good time. It's the atmosphere of a frat party, which reminds me, if you folks will recall, Rush Limbaugh, when the Abu Ghraib prison scandal broke, he said, oh, it's just guys blowing off steam. So when we hear that the Bohemian Grove is just like a frat party, we should still probably pay attention to that. The term conspiracy theory always gets busted down with, they could never keep that a secret. It would be too big. People would talk. And what you were referring to, I believe, in policy being crafted and discussed at Bohemian Grove is the Manhattan Project. One of the biggest, largest, a huge, thousands of people involved. No one ever said a word. It was kept hush-hush. I think that puts the lie to, somebody would have talked.
Yeah, they kept it secret, and then during that time, they made plans to drop the bomb on Hiroshima, and it was after, and a lot of people will disagree on this, but it's true, that they rendered a writ of surrender prior to the bomb going off, and it didn't get to the right hands in time. We bombed Hiroshima, we bombed Nagasaki, and did a lot of damage, of course. That's an understatement to Japan. And now, what policies are being made now? What plans are being made now? Whenever those men get together at Bohemian Grove, something diabolical is afoot. As I always say, it's hard to get ahead when something is afoot, and definitely something at Bohemian Grove is afoot. There's something actually that Anonymous says that they will spill, a secret that they will spill about the fate of the world that is going to be spoken of at Bohemian Grove, and I'm wondering if that's all hype or if they have something because of what Julian Assange has wanted to release as a whistleblower, and the fact that he is going to be probably jailed for some sexual indiscretions. They say sex crimes, but basically what happened is he didn't wear a condom when he had sex when he was in, I believe, Sweden, and that's against the law there. You're not supposed to be messing around, and you could be charged with a sexual offense because of that.
Well, and Dominique Strauss-Kahn allegedly, had this sort of sexual assault, but then it turns out it's maybe a put-up job, and you wonder sometimes why people like this get smeared. Whether or not, Julian Assange is the strange Manchurian candidate that comes from a bizarre CIA-connected cult, and you can look all that up and see it, or whether he's doing really what he claims to be doing is shining a light on our secretive organizations. Let's not get too much into Assange and WikiLeaks and all that. And I'm not really here to necessarily say bad things about Anonymous, because ultimately it is anonymous, and who knows who's doing what. That's what makes it the perfect cover. Unfortunately, it also makes it the perfect cover for intelligence operations to infiltrate. And
I want to touch on that. I want to touch on that after the break about the idea that this could be an intelligence trap as well. My guest tonight, James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. We're going to have him for a while to talk about this. This just broke about the Operation Bohemian Grove busting open Bohemian Grove, the elite gathering that happens every year in Northern California. We'll be back.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Way out in the water, singing, swimming.
KXL. Choose Cooney BMW and discover.
Homeowners, why replace your expensive shrubbery every time deer or rabbits visit your property? You can save your plantings for a fraction of the cost with Bobex. Spring is here. Prevent nature's hungry creatures from feasting on your gardens and landscapes. Stop them the all-natural way with Bobex repellent sprays. Bobex guarantees protection for your spring plantings from deer and small animal damage. Use the most effective animal repellents on the market. Bobex repellents give people the confidence to invest in and enjoy their landscapes. Bobex unique deterrent ingredients are all natural and are environmentally friendly. Bobex won't wash off in the rain or regular watering. Get Bobex at your local independent garden center or hardware store. If they don't have it, ask them to get Bobex. To learn more about Bobex, go to Bobex.com. That's BOBBEX.com. Spring spraying brings May flowers. Plants thrive and survive with Bobex.
Back several times today. Don't miss a thing. This is your station for breaking news and the most traffic and weather reports each day. News Radio 101 KXL.
KXL News Time 9:30.
Fox News Radio, I'm Sal Giangrasso. Saying there's a small but rising risk that the government will default on its debt, Moody's Investors Service is threatening to cut the United States credit rating.
In a usually quiet world of bonds and borrowing, that is a symbol crash. A lower Moody's rating would mean the government would pay higher interest rates for its borrowing. That would mean higher rates for a lot of other borrowing, like car loans and mortgages.
Fox News Radio's Steve Taylor. President Obama ended Wednesday's nearly 2-hour debt limit negotiation brusquely, declaring enough is enough, rejecting Republican demands that he accept a short-term extension of the government's borrowing authority. At least 3 people died when a home in upstate Salem, New York, exploded.
It's not clear what caused the explosion, but one neighbor reports overhearing one survivor, a man who rented the home, discussing a leaking propane tank.
Fox News Radio's Jeff Monasso. Fox News, we report, you decide.
From Portland's breaking news, traffic, and weather station, News Radio 101 FM KXL, I'm David Martin. Good evening. More Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis coming up right now. It's Portland's most traffic 24/7. That's what we get you here at News Radio 101 FM KXL. I-5 looking good in the Wilsonville area through the curves and in and out of Vancouver. I-84 the Banfield, 6 minutes is all between 205 and 5, and no problems on I-205 to report right now. On the west side, Sunset just 6 minutes between 217 and 405, and you're smooth out there at 185th as well. And Highway 217, good to go the entire 7-mile stretch. And your KXL forecast.
Mostly cloudy for the rest of the night. The showers will be ending, though. We've got dry weather Thursday and Friday in the low 70s. A few more scattered showers Saturday, then partly sunny and warmer, upper 70s Sunday. I'm KGW News Channel 8 meteorologist Matt Safino for News Radio 101 FM KXL.
Currently 62 in Portland. News happens fast. Check back 2, 3, 4 times a day and don't miss a thing. I'm David Martin. Set a button for News Radio 101 FM KXL.
Hey, I'd like you to try out my favorite steakhouse in Portland. It's Sylvan Steakhouse. You know, the place is great. Wonderful food. And on top of that, piano jazz through the dinner hour. And they smoke their own meats, which means the flavors you're going to taste here are absolutely unique to Sylvan Steakhouse. They've got a fabulous weekend brunch and daily lunch special starting at $3.99, like their cheese omelet with breakfast potatoes or a delicious 8-ounce pulled pork sandwich with spicy horseradish coleslaw. Entertainment every weekend. It's the Sylvan Steakhouse. Try it out and tell them Lars sent you. Hey there, it's Lars Larson for Gresham Roofing. Gresham Roofing specializes in residential, commercial, and green roofing. But the most important thing for Tina and me, they do flat roofing, like our roof. Look them up on the web, GreshamRoofing.com. That's GreshamRoofing.com.
Beautiful bodies. 16 drop-dead gorgeous cars now at the Portland Art Museum. That's what the Oregonian says about allure of the automobile. You will not want to miss these brilliantly conceived cars from the 30s to the 60s. The New York Times calls them four-wheeled masterpieces. Bentley, Ferrari, Mercedes, Porsche, to name a few. Not to mention Steve McQueen's ultra-hip convertible Jaguar. Names you know, cars you may never see again. Advance reservations required at portlandartmuseum.org.
When you reuse and recycle your leftover paint, it goes from garage,
wow, it looks great,
to glorious. And if your next project calls for new paint, make sure you buy right. Not only are you saving time and storage space, you're also saving money. Learn more at paintcare.org and use our free paint calculator to help take the guesswork out of buying the right amount of paint. At paintcare.org, get advice on reusing and recycling your leftover paint and turn what's old into something new. Paintcare.org. Buy right, reuse, recycle.
Okay, temps are headed back into the 80s, and I think summer's finally here. With it comes the heat that builds up in the attic and bores through the walls, and now is the time to do something about getting more insulation over your head and in the wall cavities. When temperatures get well over 100 degrees in the attic, and you only have a few inches of insulation between that and your bedroom, is it any wonder you can't sleep at night, or that the air conditioning never seems to shut off? The guys at Westside Drywall and Insulation know all the technical stuff about insulation and ventilation, stuff you probably couldn't care less about, but what's really important to you is that they also know just the right products to use to hold the heat in during the winter and keep the heat out during the summer. As a Trade Ally contractor of Energy Trust of Oregon, they can help with incentives and Oregon residential energy tax credits to improve the energy efficiency of your home under CCB license 71044. You know, you can save a ton of money by installing the right insulation. Get a quote from them today by visiting their website, westsidedrywall.com.
And weather driving to work and back home. News Radio 101 FM, KXL, Oregon's station of record.
Now a question. What have Herbert Hoover, Mark Linkletter, Jack London, and Richard Nixon all had in common? Well, they've all been members of the exclusive all-male Bohemian Club in California, where every year at this time, the elite from around the country get together for 2.5 weeks of fun and game.
The place is called Bohemian Grove, and it's located just 80 miles north of San Francisco.
Good hello. Mr. Our birthday wants me to inform you that no year is not now and never has been part of his organization. And Mr. Fairwood endorses or supports anything a parent is being forced to say. Mr. Alverde has maintained a long and fruitful business relationship with the CIA, and he has nothing but best wishes for that beleaguered institution which has done so much to preserve our American way of life both here at home and abroad. Let's all rally round Mr. Alverde and help him make the world a better place.
Listen, you hear the screams?
Yes.
Of the children.
I've seen them carry a child to the owl.
In 1964.
A child to the owl.
Bohemian Grove.
A child to the owl.
Bohemian Grove.
But Richard Nixon.
Bohemian Grove.
A child to the owl. A child to the owl.
Bohemian Grove.
Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Tonight with a breaking story, Operation Bohemian Grove in effect as Anonymous. A group online has decided to protest, and they're calling calling all cars basically to head out to Northern California. Want to go to a spot there where the elite gather for fun and games, as they say. A get-together where they party and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But one thing that they also do is something called the cremation of care. We're going to get into that in just a bit. The number to call tonight is 1-877-733-1011. That's 1-877-733-1011. Or you can call us at 503-417-9595. That's 503-417-9KXL to talk with us tonight. MediaMonarchy.com. James Evan Pilato is with us, taking time out of his schedule to speak with us. You've done interviews in the past about this. A little bit about the cremation of care. A lot of people, I think, associate that with Alex Jones because he did bust into that. And that's considered a highly secret affair. It's a ritual, a huge ritual that they do there that's rather frightening and in a lot of ways very satanic.
And you mentioned Alex Jones earlier, and that is probably, for myself, the first time I had ever heard of Bohemian Grove. And he has a documentary called Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove that you can, of course, watch for free online. But he actually was not the first, and he was not the last. He's just the loudest and the most well-known about it.
Was there anyone that got in before him?
A guy who worked for the now-defunct Spy magazine, a guy named Philip Weiss, spent some 7 days in the camp posing as a guest, which led to his November 1989 article, Inside Bohemian Grove.
Wow.
And even, and again, the story that I have posted to the top of Media Monarchy right now on the Bohemian Grove gearing up, I have some of the flashback links to some of the stories that I posted through the past years on Media Monarchy, where a Vanity Fair writer was arrested there just a couple of years ago. So, again, Alex Jones wasn't the first or the last. He's just probably the most prominent and the one with the literal and figurative bullhorn.
Yeah, I always, the first one that I ever heard about it was, of course, Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is very interesting because I am a reader of Spy magazine, and I do remember a cover on Spy where they showed Henry Kissinger and Merv Griffin in party attire partying. I have a feeling that's the cover that has the story about Bohemian Grove in it. Am I right?
That's right. It's that kind of illustration of the two, and of course, that kind of cartoon look.
Okay, great. That's interesting.
So, in that clip that we heard that started this segment, where you heard the news announcer asking, what do Richard Nixon and da-da-da all have in common? I would point folks to that video, and you can find it on YouTube. It's, 1981 ABC News report on the Bohemian Grove, and we're 10 days shy of that story being 30 years old.
Wow.
And in that clip, so they mention Richard Nixon, and let's just mention a quick quote from Richard Nixon, and this was discovered in the, tons and tons and tons of material in the Watergate tapes. So here's Richard Nixon. The Bohemian Grove that I attend from time to time, the Easterners and the others come there, but it is the most blanky blank blank thing you could ever imagine. That San Francisco crowd that goes in there, it's just terrible. I mean, I won't shake hands with anybody from San Francisco. So, Nixon's obvious problems aside, you have him on tape basically alluding to there are homosexual activities going on at this all-male event.
Wow. That's strange that, especially when many of these people who make policy are anti-gay. And many of them are conservatives, and they do make these policies, and yet they're out there doing these homosexual activities at this grove.
It's the constant thing I think we see in lots of different areas, unfortunately, that one, deranged people seek positions of power so that they can exercise their own deranged, sociopathic tendencies. So that's why you see, congressmen like Mark Foley being on the, Help the Kids committee, and he ends up being involved with little kids. Or you hear about the cops on the anti-drug force selling meth, and that was last week out of Florida. So you see people, they want to get into these positions and act like they're anti-drug or anti-homosexuality or anti any of these things. Just, like all the preachers that get busted as well.
Wow.
And isn't it interesting that this is mostly a sort of Republican-style gathering, and that's what it's kind of painted as in the media. And Clyde, you and I both, we really don't subscribe to the fake left-right paradigm. What do you say? It takes two crooked wings to fly this phony bird.
Yeah, it takes a left wing and a right wing to fly fascism, and it's happening right now in this country. That's what I've said before.
So this is something that generally has the quote-unquote conservatives, involved in it. And why is it always the conservatives and the Republicans and the ministers? Whenever they get in trouble, it always sure seems to be something homosexual.
That's really true. It's bizarre, but true. And you have people like Wiener who did what he did, and it just seems to me that these sex scandals, you go to the Bohemian Grove, and I swear, whatever goes on at Bohemian Grove stays there, allegedly. And then something always comes up. We had the whole Johnny Gosch thing in the past, where we had that strange homosexual reporter that was there, that was tied to the Bush family and to the boys club.
Now you're getting into it. Now you're getting into the dirty stuff.
Well, yeah, the stuff that was prior to the internet that no one knows about the sex scandal in the White House with the Bushes and the boys and the Larry King boys, not Larry King the announcer, but Larry King that ran the boys clubs of that off at Air Force Base. A lot of that is tied to, of course, Colonel Aquino, the head of the Church of Satan, the Church of Set at the time. That's just a very strange bedfellows when it comes to what happens there at the Grove. A lot of prostitutes there that are brought in to service these men. It's just it's a club of debauchery. And when they say it's just an innocent get-together, it's not an innocent get-together, especially when they do this cremation of care, which is actually a child sacrifice to a 40-foot horned owl. And I know that sounds bizarre and it sounds like something out of the Twilight Zone, but they do this. It's the first thing they do. The first night they gather together, they do this, what they call it. It's a satanic ritual, and actually the owl represents Molech, which of course is a caricature of the horned god Baal, and also it's the horned god Baal. It's Molech. It's this horned god that they used to sacrifice children to at ancient times, but they have it a horned owl, not the horned bull.
Now, you'll have a lot of folks who are vehement critics of the Bohemian Grove not actually sort of buy into the fact that they're doing mock occult rituals. So just as I was saying, you'll have people who may not believe the official story of 9/11 or that we were lied to or that it was covered up, but they don't want to get into, the fact that, the drills or the insider trading or the prior warnings or all of those things. So you have folks that are critics of this kind of gathering because it is rich elites getting together in secret to what is in reality talking shop and discussing policy.
Exactly.
The official party line is, they're just there to party. There was a group of professors for Sonoma State University who wrote a long paper, and you can get the PDF of it, about the Bohemian Grove. That was sort of, again, a sort of limited hangout. Yes, it was exposing some things, but ultimately said, it's just guys, going to blow off some steam. They have recently discussed this, and their, several years old report just recently to the Press Democrat, again, out of California, and they have now kind of hardened their stance, saying, of course they're discussing policy. That's what they do. They're going there to do it. So let me pose a question. If you had a bunch of NFL, football guys, or you had a bunch of celebrities all sneak off and go hide away somewhere, you would see the most amazing, force of just people trying to find out, oh my God, what's Oprah doing? Or God, what's that football guy doing? But somehow when the actual power players get together, that's, deafening silence.
Right, exactly. And it's just bizarre. Like I say, it's bizarre that all this is going down, because I wasn't planning on doing a show about this until I started reading about the indignant, how Anonymous is indignant about this. They want to do the protest. I'm sure there are other people that are going to be protesting too. It's some strange stuff going on. Let's go to Avis right now. Hi, Avis. You're on Ground Zero with James Evan Pilato. Go ahead.
Hey, Clyde, thanks for having me on. I hope that all your listeners nationwide and on the internet are calling their friends and telling them to listen to this show. Everything that you are saying is absolutely the truth. Now, there was a movie made called 8mm with Nicolas Cage. And in that, there's a metaphor for the Bohemian Grove. And it's about what the rich elite can do. And when you have all the money in the world and you have all the power, what's the one thing you want to have? Control.
Exactly.
And on Al Jones' video, if you watch very, very closely, you can see that is actually a live child that they are using in the sacrifice. But you've got to really, really look at that video. And I'm amazed that he was allowed in there, and I'm amazed that he was ever allowed to broadcast that in his film about 911, the rise of the police state. You can see that, and if you really look at that video, you can see that thing is moving in the basket.
Some say that it's robotic. They were saying that it's a robotic thing, that was given to them, that it's all theatrics, and but I have also that it has some sort of a skeleton that's metal that is in there that moves, and then when they set fire to it, it stops.
Anyway, keep talking about it. You're dead on the money. You guys are absolutely correct. I compliment you highly on your show.
All right, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You bet. See, we got time to get to Mike. Hey, Mike, you're on Ground Zero.
Hey, hi, how are you, Alex? Alex, I'm sorry. How are you, Clyde? I was just thinking of Alex Jones.
Of course. Everybody thinks of Alex Jones when they think of this story, but go ahead.
Well, look, here's the deal. My dad and I owned a commercial laundry back in we started it in 82, and we purchased a larger business in 84 that actually provided the laundry service for the Grove. And because I was the sales and customer service guy of the two of us, we had about 60 employees, about 10 trucks. It was decent size. It was in Sebastopol, California, which is just up the road. I spent both Spring Jinx, they call it, which is Memorial Day weekend, and the summer encampment there pretty much around the clock for several years. And amongst the people I met were Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and Andy Devine, Art Linkletter. There were California politicians that were there. I met some big people, George Shultz, Casper Weinberger, Nixon, Ford, Reagan were there. I didn't meet them. Kissinger I heard speak, Malcolm Forbes. And I've got to tell you that, I was there and I saw the cremation of care several times, and not only did I never see anything moving, it wouldn't have been mechanical or anything else, there was nothing there, it was a bundle. They had this sacrifice deal. My take on it was, having been there, first of all, the Grove is very big. There's 130-some camps. At least there were when I was there. And each one of those I was there when Merv Griffin, I heard the members of his camp ribbing him because he just sold Wheel of Fortune for $500 million, and they were trying to get him to buy new linen for all the beds. It's a funny thing. They sleep in tents, maybe with decks under them, in cots, but they'll have 300 thread count Egyptian cotton sheets. It's just the strangest thing.
Well, I had a friend named Michael, Mike, I have a friend named Michael as well, whose father was a sculptor, and he sculpted Ronald Reagan's bust, and he was able to get into Bohemian Grove, and he attended several of the meetings there. A lot of the meetings are harmless. The only thing he said is people pee everywhere. He says they just whip it out, doesn't matter where.
Right in the road.
And he said something like the effect that he says he didn't want to go to the cremation of care ceremony because, see, he's a magician. He said that it frightened even him. He said that he felt that the idea of the necromantic looking into the remains of whatever it is they burn for signs is necromancy, and he was frightened by that.
Well, and they do have the big owl, and they do the fire thing. They have the boat on the lake. I've seen all that. I don't know, for some reason it didn't affect me that way, but that's maybe individual taste. But I guess my main point is this, without trying to rain on
go ahead.
Go.
It's not raining on anybody's parade. Hold on one moment. We got to hold you over. Hold on one moment, okay?
Sure.
Hold on. We're going to take a break right now. We got to take a break, and we'll finish off with Mike and have him talk. Mike says it's harmless. However, I have people who have told me it's not. It's pretty creepy there. And laundry people, they say it's harmless. They have to do the laundry. Keep it here on Ground Zero. We'll be back.
Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
James Evan Pilato is my guest from MediaMonarchy.com. We have him here to talk about the breaking story of Operation Bohemian Grove. They're going to protest that area, trying to keep the elites from getting in there and doing their cremation of care ceremony. We also have Mike on the phone who says that he used to do laundry there just down from the Grove. You know, one question I have for you, Mike, if it's not all what it's cracked up to be, why do they arrest reporters who go in there and try to talk about what's going on? If it's all simple and all wonderful and on the level, and when our government says they want to be transparent, why is it that we arrest people to try to get in there?
Well, understand, first of all, it's not a government function, although there are a lot of government people there.
So that means that people can go in there and report on it then, right?
Don't misunderstand me. I'm not defending it. I'm just trying to tell you what I saw and what I know.
No, but you were trying to tell me that there's a lot of misconceptions about Bohemian Grove. What I know is that a lot of reporters have been arrested there. I know a lot of people who go in there risk their lives getting video in there. I don't know why it's such a big risk if it's just a bunch of guys basically having circle jerks. You know what I'm saying?
Well, when we were there, you know, we would drive our truck. We had we had trucks with our name on the side. We were allowed in because I knew the Grove manager. Jerry Dahl was his name back in the day, D-H-A-L. I knew all the workers there, and, you know, I had no problem. But a lot of the people that went there, you know, were disruptive. They were trying to block the roads, and I, you know, look, like I said, I'm not defending it. I'm just telling you what I saw. And what I saw is not 100% of what happened.
Right.
It's just that I saw a lot of it because of all the vendors there. I was probably one of the very few that would stay the night. And I was also probably, for that reason, I probably had as much exposure or more than anybody that wasn't required to fill out a non-disclosure, because the members and the workers there, the people that work there, have to fill out a non-disclosure. They can't talk about it.
See, that's another thing that has me kind of worried, Mike. You can't talk about non-disclosure. Thanks for the call, buddy. I appreciate you keeping us informed in that. James Evan Pilato, I thank you for being on the program tonight at short notice talking about Operation Bohemian Grove. MediaMonarchy.com. Anything you want to say before we close?
Well, I think, one, and if you want to keep me on another segment, now I'm all jazzed up to stay on.
Okay, well, Doc Marquis will be on with you. He's coming up too. Of course, Doc Marquis was raised in the middle of the stuff. He knows a lot about what goes on in Bohemian Grove, and he can explain a lot of it to us. So stay with us, James Evan Pilato, and coming up, Doc Marquis will also be here to give his commentary on this breaking news story. They're going to be opening up Bohemian Grove, and they're going to try and expose what's going on there, from the cremation of care to the gathering of our leaders who are making plans and decisions about you. It's all coming up on Ground Zero. Don't go away.
News Radio 101 KXL.
Hello. You are about to experience Ground Zero, an on-speaker experience. Cuts through the crowd. Just when you thought you were safe.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Ground Zero tonight on News Radio 101 FM KXL. Breaking story about the Bohemian Grove. A group of what are known as internet trolls called Anonymous, who actually have ties or sympathies with WikiLeaks owner Julian Assange, has decided to send a worldwide plea to have all of the people who are associated with them to put on Guy Fawkes masks, show up at the Bohemian Grove, and protest their meeting and their gathering they have annually there. We've had Mike call the program and say that he worked in the area, saw a number of speakers there, didn't find it all that scary. There are a lot of other people, though, that think that it is scary, that what goes on there is some pretty interesting rituals, including something called the cremation of care. Now, there are many people who have heard of the Bohemian Grove, and there's still many others who are unaware of this place. It's a barbed-wired, walled-in city, actually, in the middle of this forest area. It becomes a refuge for our leaders and the global elite in the month of July. The woods of Northern California, it's located there. I think it's Monte Rio is the area there. It's 80 miles north of San Francisco. It's loaded with trees, cliffs, could be very dangerous for people who don't know their way through that area. And you enter on a road that's Bohemian Avenue. Now, a friend of mine told me that he attended the Bohemian Grove gathering and said that he thought it was relaxing. He confirms with Mike. It was relaxing. He did, though, avoid the cremation of care ceremony. He is a magician. He said it felt like it was some grotesque magic ritual with what looked like a robe, actually robed figures wearing black Klansman robes, he described, and one looked like a pontiff wearing death paint. There was a wagon carrying a wrapped figure. Now, while it's supposed to be the effigy of a child, it appeared to be a heap of blankets that smelled of fuel used for a backyard barbecue, he said. Now, they carried torches to a large stone owl known as the Owl of Bohemia. The owl is lit by floodlights, and other men gather in robes. The robes are different colors, red or green. Then there's an invocation to the spirits of the dead, then the spirits of the wood, and then there's an officiating priest in a robe there. The priest says to the great owl that he is the great owl of Babylon, offers a child sacrifice called dull care to the horned god, and it's just a real satanic, weird type of thing. Tonight on the program, we bring to the show James Evan Pilato, who is with MediaMonarchy.com, said he wanted to hold over a little bit. We're going to have him on for an hour, but he wanted to stay on board. We're going to be talking with Doc Marquis in a moment. We remember Doc Marquis as the man who was raised in the Illuminati, is now out and speaking out against it and what they do in their rituals. He's very well versed on what goes on in Bohemian Grove. So, James, what exactly are you going to do now? Are you going to be focusing in on this, honing in on what's going to be happening, keeping tabs on Anonymous to see if they are going to be going there doing the protest?
I will definitely be paying attention to that, and usually there are activists and also insiders who generally, over the last several years, end up leaking the entire attendees list. So we'll kind of find out and get a little more information on who all is there, in addition to some of the folks that we already kind of know, and other folks, like Ken Burns, the documentary filmmaker, and others. But I want to quickly, if I can, address some of the things the first two callers mentioned. The first caller mentioned the film 8mm, which I believe is a Nicolas Cage film, and that's about snuff films. So let's tie in another movie that folks have maybe never heard of, and it's directed by Harry Shearer, who folks may know from Spinal Tap, and, of course, voicing Mr. Burns on The Simpsons. He made a film in 2002 called Teddy Bear's Picnic, set at a differently named Shishi, Northern California resort, where a waiter uses a movie camera to spy on the annual communal vacation of a group of rich white U.S. government and business leaders who drink and carouse to excess while plotting their next move on the global stage. The goal, to sell the embarrassing and incriminating footage to the media and expose the leaders for what they really are. That brings me to what the second caller was saying, and I didn't get the impression that he was trying to defend the Bohemian Grove.
No, I didn't get that either. He was a very good call. Yeah.
Is that on its face, yeah, there are maybe some rituals and things going on. Is this a real, is it an effigy? Was it something really moving? I think those are the questions, again, that you can fall down the rabbit hole and maybe not see the forest for the trees. Because the question ultimately to ask is, even if all this stuff is fake, and again, that's kind of the preface I make on all the different areas, even if you believe the official story, why are our conservative leaders frolicking in the woods and performing mock pagan rituals? Meanwhile, in public, they'll tell you that they believe in Jesus Christ and they're Christians and they're conservatives and they're all of these things. So that, I think, gets more to the heart of the matter, is the show about it, whether it's true or not. And, Walter Cronkite's voice was used for a long time in the cremation of care ceremony because, of course, he was a fan and he was an attendee because he's high placed in the media and everybody trusts, Uncle Walter while he was around.
Well, tonight I have actually an excerpt from the film where they actually expose the Bohemian Grove and part of the ritual, and that ritual does not sound anything holy. It doesn't sound like it's anything from any Christian gathering. It's an amazingly pagan gathering, and whether you want to call it satanic or Luciferian or whatever you want to call it, I know that Anthony J. Hilder would call it that. I think it's a creepy ceremony, if anything else.
So I made a reference a little bit ago to just all the other kind of different folks that attend there. I had to dig it up from the Internet Archive because the original story isn't posted anymore, but it goes back to June of 2006. Group protests dead members' Bohemian Club membership. The Bohemian Grove Action Network protests the gathering of the Bohemian Club's all-male political elite. Claim Bob Weir and former Grateful Dead percussionist Mickey Hart joined what they called the Evil Empire years ago. And those guys have admitted that they are attendees of the Bohemian Grove. So you have Walter Cronkite, the head of, the establishment's trusted, controlled corporate media. And then you have guys from Grateful Dead who are ostensibly, counterculture and progressive ideals and things. But when you start to peer behind the veneer of things, you'll see that a lot of these guys are all connected, regardless of the public face and front that they like to put up.
Exactly, and a lot of people had thought that the Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, several bands are part of the Tavistock Institute, a group that wanted to brainwash and manipulate the world. What I want to do now is introduce Doc Marquis back into the picture with you right now, James. Doc Marquis, of course, has been on this program before. He was at Conspiracy Con with me as well, and we were talking about a little bit about Bohemian Grove and what they do. Doc, are you there?
Yes, how you doing, Clyde?
Good to have you here at such short notice and how this story is breaking about Anonymous wanting to break into Bohemian Grove. What can you tell me about what Bohemian Grove is to you since you have a background in the Illuminati?
It's definitely a center for Illuminati activities. You see, I've heard a lot about the cremation of care ceremony ages ago when I was in the Illuminati. As a matter of fact, if we think about it, the ceremony itself, the cremation of care, that goes back to, I think, 1929. They've been holding that every year. And it's not what people think, just a simple ceremony. If you understand the occult, you'll understand this is a genuine ceremony. For instance, and I'll just give you a couple examples. We know that for most occult ceremonies, you have to have the four elements there, which is fire, water, air, and earth. Correct? You've heard of those, right?
Yes, and human, too. That's the other element.
Right.
Of this,
well, that would be, some would say the fifth one, which would be the spirit.
Exactly.
Okay, there's a lot of debate in the occult about that one, but who cares? But the point is, the four major elements have to be there if this is a genuine ceremony: fire, air, earth, water. Well, anyone who's ever seen any photos of the ceremony itself will note that, first of all, there is a giant fire pit that's blazing. Second, water is represented there because of the lake that surrounds that part of a small amphitheater.
Right.
Air is always present, and the stage itself is on the earth. The four elements are met. Now, there has to be some sort of idol or depiction that represents whatever god they're worshiping. And the idol, we know, is a 40-foot owl. The owl of the Illuminati is right there on the lake. Next, the ceremony itself has to have some sort of offering or sacrifice. We know that whether this is, in the case of Bohemian Grove, symbolic or genuine, I've known and I've been told in my past that many a times it was a human sacrifice offering in the past. So there has been a genuine offering there. Now, the people, of course, have to be in the proper occult attire. You have to have everyone, depending on the ceremony, dressed in black, and one person, which will be the high priest, will be dressed differently than the others,
He wears gray.
generally speaking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because he walks between the physical world and the spiritual world. That's why it's gray. Okay, you understand that connection there?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you see, all the necessary elements of a genuine occult ceremony is there.
That's right.
And when we consider that, that is definitely the owl of the Illuminati. I can tell you from personal experience, that is the symbol of Lucifer in the order of the Illuminati.
Doc, we're going to hold that thought right there. With me, Doc Marquis, and also on the line with me, James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. We're discussing the breaking news story of Operation Bohemian Grove. Anonymous, a group on the internet, is urging people to protest the gathering. They're calling people from all over, and there'll be plenty of other protesters there blocking the road for people getting in there to the ceremonies, which of course is the cremation of care, a strange, according to Doc Marquis, occult ceremony that he's fully aware of and has given us details about. Coming up, you'll be hearing portions of that ceremony in this hour, so don't go away. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
Got an opinion? Call KXL now. 503-417-9KXL or 877-733-1011. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
I think it's the first time in the history of Ground Zero on KXL we've had tag team guests. My guest tonight, James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com, and Doc Marquis is with us tonight. He's been on the program, too. Just got back from Conspiracy Con's got some new videos out he was going to talk about tonight as well. But in the meantime, we're talking about the matters at hand, which is the Bohemian Grove invasion that's going to be happening. It was called out today, and they're probably going to be meeting there on the 15th. There may be some havoc to deal with. We'll keep you informed on that. But in the meantime, Doc, you were saying something about this being a satanic ritual. I listened back to the ritual, the audio from the ritual that was taken from the renegade invasion that Alex Jones's people did. And one of the things I didn't recall when I listened back to the ceremony was that after the burned effigy or the burned child sacrifice is done, they look through the remains, or the cremains, if you will, to find an answer. That is where I immediately, my mouth dropped and thought, necromancy. This is frightening.
Not necromancy, a form of necromancy, but it's more towards divination.
Right.
Necromancy is communication to the dead or to demonic forces. When you're trying to look into the future through this methodology, it's known as divination.
So they're using the dead for divination, which is, I don't know, it's kind of, I'm just going through the cremains and finding answers.
This is a very ancient practice. I mean, it goes on in the Illuminati to this very day. I mean, what? People way back when used to believe if you looked at the entrails of a chicken,
right,
a dead carcass, you could divine the future.
Exactly.
There were people who would actually kill horses, look at their spilt entrails, try to divine the future. It's the same thing with human sacrifice.
They do it with cows today.
That's exactly what they will do.
Yeah, they do it with cows today, too, even though it's a science, though. It's not divination. They look at a cow because the cow is an incubator for diseases. It's interesting. That's interesting. You should bring that up, but they do. They look at cows' entrails now, and that could be explanation for all the cattle mutilations as well.
Well, this has been going on for millenniums. As I said, if you were ever in the Illuminati, you would find this out quite easily. And as far as the cremation of care goes, this particular ceremony, as I said, it's been going on since 1929, as far as my memory serves. And it's they're not about to give it up because this is a very important event because, as you well know, during the summertime we come to where, how do I explain this without getting too occultic now? Let's just say it's a very important midpoint in the year.
Yeah.
And this is where you need to, if you're in the Illuminati, and in this case, a Bohemian Grove especially, since most of the people there are in the Illuminati, you have to have an offering to Lucifer. This is known as Luciferian witchcraft, or, the worship of Lucifer. It's not Satanism. It's Luciferian witchcraft. And what they're doing, they're worshiping Lucifer as, demanding, because there are 8 nights of human sacrifice on the Illuminati calendar, and one of them is definitely in the middle of the summer, and it has to be observed. It's not an accident that this particular ceremony is going on. It is a necessity since they are worshiping Lucifer. And if we just go back on just a number of, the occult, the obvious occult things that are going there, there's no doubt about it. It's definitely Luciferian.
It just feels... Go ahead, Michael. James, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could jump in with the update I just checked out during the break from just a few hours ago. Protesters gather outside Bohemian Grove, again from Press Democrat, who seems to be covering the story pretty closely, again covering and covering up. About 45 people showed up Wednesday near the entrance to the Bohemian Grove in Monte Rio, marking the first protest against the summer encampment of the wealthy and powerful Bohemians. So 45 people there, at least allegedly according to this, but again, there are already videos that people have been putting up on YouTube, and I'm sure we're only going to see more.
Well, the announcement went out just today, so that's 45 people in, how many hours? I just got word of it around 6 o'clock today, Pacific time, and I immediately had to put together a show about it, and then I called you. I actually sent you a message, James, and I said, hey, come on the show and talk about it. Doc was just ringed up, how many minutes ago? About 10, 15 minutes ago, right, Doc?
Just that, yes.
Yeah, so 45 people in a small amount of time, having them come from all over the country, I think is pretty damn good in the beginning.
Well, then one thing they need to know is that if the summer encampment, if it's just beginning, that means this Saturday they're going to hold the cremation of care.
Yeah, they are, definitely so.
It's always done on, whenever
Saturday.
The midsummer encampment has begun. It's always done on the very first Saturday.
That's Saturn Day, the day of Saturn. That's pretty good, Doc.
Of course. And Saturn, way back in the ancient days, was the king of the gods.
That's right. We'll be back with more, Doc, and we'll also have James Evan Pilato with us right here on Ground Zero. If you'd like to add to the conversation, 1-877-733-1011. That's 1-877-733-1011 or 503-417-9595. That's 417-9KXL. We'll be back with more of this fascinating talk right after this.
News Radio 101, KXL.
I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your arms. Those have been yelling over the U.S. is going to take over global conspiracy. They've been crazy, but now they're right. A new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges for the future. The burdens of global citizenship continue to bind us together. The change of leadership in Washington will not lift this burden. In this new century, Americans and Europeans alike will be required to do more, not less. Partnership and cooperation among nations is not a choice. It is the only way, the one way, to protect our common security and advance our common humanity.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Tonight, the Bohemian Grove and what it's all about. Operation Bohemian Grove is happening. We've been protesting there so far, according to James Evan Pilato, my guest. There's 45 that have gathered since the announcement. It's anonymous saying, go there, block the roads. We don't want this cremation of care to go down. The ritual that we've talked about with Doc Marquis, who's also my guest tonight on Ground Zero, a tag team match between the two. We've got a reporter and a guy that was raised in the Illuminati that knows exactly what's going on with this cremation of care. Now, tonight, I have decided that I wanted to play an excerpt. This is actually Alex Jones, who is a well-known reporter, did a movie called Secrets of the Bohemian Grove. And he had managed to get a camera guy into the Grove to videotape the cremation of care ceremony to show that this ceremony is highly occult, highly Luciferian or satanic, depending on how you look at it. It's a very interesting movie. It's one that he's famous for because he broke in with those cameramen. But I find interesting, and this is now, imagine yourself standing apart from a stage, is across from a lake, and you have a microphone on and you're recording this ceremony. What I have for you now is the recording, a small piece of the ceremony where they do the cremation of care, where they actually burn what appears to be a child at the foot of a 40-foot horned owl. Now, if you want a full effect of this, just to see how creepy it really is, I've turned down the lights in the studio. I urge you to turn the lights down in your home if you're there, if you're listening, wherever you're listening, if you're in the car or what have you. This is really going to give you the creeps because it just doesn't sound like it's holy. And all of these conservative guys that go to this thing, how can they be real good Christians if they're participating in this creepy ceremony? Give a listen now.
When we learn that me he cannot slay, year after year he burned me in this grove, lifting your puny shouts of triumph to the stars. But when again he turned your faces to the marketplace, do ye not find me waiting as of old? Ye conquer care.
Nay, thou mocking spirit, it is not all a dream. We know thou waitest for us. With this our sylvan holiday has ended. We shall meet thee and fight thee as of old, and some of us prevail against thee, and some thou shalt destroy. But this too we know. Year after year within this happy grove, our fellowship bans thee for a space. Thy malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free. You shall burn me once again.
Now believe, flame, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire.
Prince of all mortal wisdom, owl of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel.
On the heights of
very bizarre ritual that we're hearing on the air right now. That's from the Bohemian Grove. Somebody said in the chat room, it sounds like a religious ceremony. Yeah, with all that hideous demonic laughter, I think it sounds very much like a religious ceremony. What do you think, James Evan Pilato? What do you think of that?
You can find some of those quotes, and you can find kind of the transcript of this cremation of care ceremony where, as we just heard, it said, "Fools, fools, fools, when will you learn that me ye cannot slay?" And all of the things, Clive, that I just wanted to mention, all the things that I've kind of mentioned and cited and sourced are all linked up in this article on the top of MediaMonarchy.com, and I would implore folks to go check out all those links. Something I want to add, actually, before I bow out gracefully here, and again, a huge thanks and appreciate you for having me on the show here.
Sure.
You alluded to earlier the homosexual nature of things, and you mentioned even the connection to, the VPs. So here's June 29th, 1989, the cover of the Washington Times, headline, quote, "Homosexual prostitution inquiry ensnares VIPs with Reagan Bush. Callboys took midnight tour of White House." So when you start to look into what goes on at the Bohemian Grove and other related, secretive organizations, you can see the New York Post reported in 2004 about a gay porn star being at the Bohemian Grove, and you mentioned Johnny Gosch, who people have speculated that he was actually Craig Gannon, who showed up, to suddenly be allowed into the White House press corps, and you can see photos of Bush kind of embracing him and kissing his bald head and things. But this gets to the Franklin cover-up, and you can see a documentary called Conspiracy of Silence. What this entails, and what you mentioned, Lawrence King with a credit union in Omaha, Nebraska, connected to Boys Town, involves kidnapping and ritual abuse of kids.
And Hunter S. Thompson was supposed to come forward with a video that he said had a young man being killed at Bohemian Grove, and Hunter S. Thompson, after saying he had that, was killed, or he committed suicide, which is...
So that would have been the snuff film, like our first caller referenced with the film 8mm.
Right.
So there's a book called The Franklin Cover-Up, and it's written by a guy named John DeCamp, and he's a former state senator, Vietnam veteran, and a former assistant to former CIA director William Colby, who people may remember accidentally died in a boat moments before he was supposed to testify in Iran-Contra. But this really gets to, I think, the heart of what at least one portion of the secret establishment is into. On the front and on the face, they're conservative Christians, but really they are pagan, child-abusing, nefarious, and what my good friend Richard Grove calls multi-generational serial killers.
Wow, that's pretty harsh. James Evan Pilato, thank you for being on the program tonight. I really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
MediaMonarchy.com if you want to look up some of the stuff that he's researched tonight. MediaMonarchy.com is a great site. He also does a broadcast on his website. You can go there as well. It's Fridays at 10 a.m. You can check him out also on the James Corbett Report. James Corbett, of course, does reports out of Japan. Fascinating stuff. Great stuff. Thank you, James, for being on the program tonight.
Thanks again, man.
You bet. Bye-bye.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. I just got a phone call from my fiance, who is very concerned about me, and she's getting a vibe off you, Sandy. She says that she's getting a vibe off you, and she's described you to me, and she described you to a T.
Wow.
And Janine was the one who told me that, if I came here, I'd come in contact with something that was very dark, and I did. And it was, and I don't know if she knows, because, sometimes she listens to my show and sometimes she doesn't, but I don't know if she knows what happened to me last night. And I don't think that she knows that I was attacked.
Yes.
And after what you heard in the description, what happened to me.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people are saying that they've seen the video and they were also concerned. And the thing is, I was watching the video myself. And it was odd because, you try to keep your composure, and that's what I tried to do. I tried to keep my composure, and it was hard to do. And what made me cry wasn't the fact that I said I was scared, but I was scared only because of the fact that I felt as though I was about to die.
I know.
And in fact, for those of you that don't know, last night when we were doing this investigation, what had happened is that during the investigation, the ghost hunters, the ghost investigators, were calling on the ghost and becoming very aggressive with the ghost. And I had no idea this was going on. They were doing it on their own, and so when it happened, first of all, Crystal was affected. And she was affected by crying. She started crying, and I was asking her a few questions. Maybe it was coming up being a little harsh. I didn't want to be harsh because she's adorable. I didn't want to be harsh to Crystal. I just was, I do a radio show. Sometimes I come up being that way. But no, I think it was that she felt what I was feeling. And I know that she was very sensitive to this. And she's had her encounters with the spirit, with this entity. And so after it was over, after I had talked with Crystal and with Central Valley Paranormal, what had happened to me was, and you can listen, and we're going to play the clip. It's the panic. I call it the panic because you hear me trying to keep my composure, but you're also hearing me trying to breathe, and I can't breathe. And you see in the video that was posted online that I have to leave the table. I go outside, and I have to actually get my composure outside near a tree. And it was the only thing I could use to position me because I felt so tired and so weak that I could not stand. And then finally I came back after a drink of water and feeling okay. I was back on the air and doing it again. But for those of you that did not tune in last night, did not know, and by the way, when I did have the breakdown, it was interesting that XM Radio, the satellite radio company, actually pulled the show at that moment. They pulled it off the air, and we're not coming back. We will not be on XM at all, unless I'm sure people call and thank them for having Ground Zero on, but XM Satellite Radio pulled the show, and we are going to be off. It was XM Channel 246. They pulled it right in the middle because we had to go to a commercial break because I couldn't get my composure, and I think they realized that it was out of control, that something horrible was going on. They cut the entire show, and it's not coming back. So, for those of you that didn't tune in last night, that didn't hear the breakdown, we have a recording of the moment when it happened, and here it is. This may be the thing that'll give them that proof. Maybe something that will wake them up to the possibility. Right now, I'm having a panic attack. Hold on a second. Hold on. Excuse me. This is not good. What? Am I going to be okay? I don't know if I'm going to be okay. Where is everybody? Are they going to come in here? Are they monitoring anything? I mean, I feel alone here. I don't know. Okay, hold on a second. I'm sorry. What is going on? Something's happening in the room. What's going on? Are you feeling anything? You're feeling something too?
I felt something when I walked in.
Something's going on. Where are the guys investigating? Get them in here. Something is going on.
Guys,
Something's going on, and everybody's feeling and sensing it. What do you got? Here? I don't know if it's here. Ask the question. Richard Gaikowski, if you're in the room, show me that you're here somehow, because I'm feeling a little weird and uneasy right now. I'm pegging out where? Show me the other meter right now. Does anybody, do we have the live stream up right now? Do we have a live stream, Olaf? We do? Okay. Do you have a URL I can give to people? It's on the Facebook page? Okay, on the Facebook page right now we have a URL. Something's wrong with me. Hold on a second.
I sent it to James.
You sent who?
I sent the link to James as well.
Okay. I'm having a panic attack right now. And it's not a good feeling. Something's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on here. See, I have the waist can right by me. I may throw up. I can't believe this happened to me right now in the air. What? No. Wait, hold on. Oh my God. Okay. This is scaring me. What's going on here? What? Are we going to go to a break? Oh crap. Oh gosh.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm going to break in and wrap it up.
Okay, please break in and wrap it up. I'm sorry. Something's going on here. It's scaring the hell out of me. Oh, my God.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to a live broadcast of Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis from Martinez, California. An investigation into the Zodiac Killer has taken a disturbing turn. We have another hour broadcasting nationally. If you want to call 888-673-3700, get involved in this episode. We will be back more with this harrowing tale. This is Ground Zero.
I have been looking for an author like Paul Levy for some time. A man who can define what I've always theorized about and haven't really had the way or the wherewithal to put my finger on what it is that I'm sensing in the world. First of all, before we get ahead of ourselves, what is Wetiko? What is it really?
Sure. Okay. Well, the term, it's an indigenous term that actually is a psychospiritual disease of the soul that exists in the collective unconscious of our species. And what that means is that we all potentially have it at any moment. So it's not like, people over there have it and we don't. If we have that perspective, that's to be under its spell, because its signature is to create separation and it feeds on polarization. And so it works, its origin is in the psyche, and it works through the projective tendencies of our mind, because we're always projecting, we're always connecting the dots. But it works through our blind spot of our unconscious in such a way so that we then unwittingly become an instrument to act it out in our world while simultaneously it hides itself from being seen. Okay? So it's actually a form of this psychic blindness that arrogantly believes not only that it's sighted, but it believes it's more sighted than anyone else. So it's to actually fall under the spell of our own mind in such a way that our, like you could say, the genius for our ability to create reality gets turned against us in a way, in a self-destructive way where we actually destroy ourselves.
It's like a collective nightmare, really, isn't it? Or are we in this collective dream or collective nightmare that we can't get out of?
Well, the thing is that the way, you see, we can't see what I'm calling the Wetiko virus when we're actually identified with the separate self. We only can begin to see it when we begin to realize that we are having a dream, that this is a mass shared dream. And to the extent that we're not awake to this Wetiko bug, whose origin is the psyche, we then guaranteed will be and are creating our worst nightmare. But what I'm pointing out in the book is that encoded in the malignancy, in the pathology, it's actually potentially showing us that we're dreaming, and it can actually help us to wake up. So that's this major thing. So it's kind of like a quantum phenomena, that it's both this pathology that's destroying our species while simultaneously encoded in the disease is actually its own medicine that can actually help us to discover who we are.
I remember Einstein said something about how there's something called quantum entanglement, where there's spooky actions at a distance. We can look at a distance and see the spooky actions going on, and sometimes they can come and they can swallow us. And I'm thinking that what we've been seeing in the distance, or what we've been seeing in front of us, and we have, perfect places to watch it on television, in the movies, elsewhere. We see the predictive program, the hyper-awareness. I mean, I've given it so many titles. There's hyper-awareness, hyper-vigilance, everything's hyper. It's like hyper-occultism. I mean, we have everything too fast, and as you say, we have these blind spots. And I always feel as though we have selective memory when it comes to history. And we forget history, we repeat history because history rhymes, and this has got to be some sort of a psychosis, a mass psychosis that has been brought on by trauma.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. The thing about Wetiko, it is a collective psychosis, and it actually has come out of this species-wide trauma. It's like our species is having PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And the thing about trauma, which is really interesting, is that when we're in trauma, the way we try to heal from our trauma actually creates the very thing we're trying to heal from in a self-perpetuating feedback loop that doesn't have an exit strategy. And that's one way of really describing Wetiko.
Yeah, I always say it's kind of like a tweaking through time, or sometimes where we see the loop happening. I was noticing it happened with what happened in Boston. The bombs went off. We had all the trigger words come out with Islamic terror, but it was Chechenian or Chechen terror. It wasn't the typical terror we're used to. So people were kind of like wondering what to do, but there was such a confusion and obfuscation. But yet all of a sudden we have all of this, demand of hate, search and seizure, once again, trampling of civil rights, civil liberties, all this happening. And everybody was like saying, okay, go ahead, let it do it. It was like Stockholm Syndrome or something. But then all of a sudden they found the landing gear of a plane near Ground Zero. Then what they did is they erected the new Freedom Tower. And then it came time to once again commemorate the death of Osama bin Laden. And it was like almost like we were reliving like this echo like a glitch in the Matrix, where a bit of deja vu had to be forced on us so that we can continually feed this Wetiko you talk about. We're feeding that virus with more of the pain, more of the anger, more of the reflection on the things that we shouldn't be reflecting on. We should be reflecting on the idea of progressing or getting out of this loop. But instead, they just want us to keep going and going and going and going. It's almost as if, I was watching some commemoration, and again, I saw the plane slamming into the building, slamming into the building, slamming into the building. 18 hours, Paul. 18 hours the average American saw that happen on 9/11. And then we watch it again, and we see the bombs going off the same way, bombs going off, planes slamming in. That's got to do a number on your unconscious mind.
Sure. Well, one way of understanding that is that the mainstream media is the propaganda organ of Wetiko disease. And people who are afflicted with Wetiko and have actually fallen under its spell, they reinforce each other's unconscious madness. They feed off of and into each other's unconscious, the part of them that's mad, in a way that almost like you could think of an impenetrable bubble gets conjured up around them that resists any sort of reflection of their insanity.
Right.
And then anybody who's pointing out their insanity gets demonized. And that's where what I'm describing is the way a psychic epidemic, a collective psychosis, which is what Wetiko is, actually becomes incarnate. And that's what's happening in our world. And what's part of the collective psychosis we're in, an expression of it is that very few people are even talking about that we're in the midst of a collective psychosis of titanic proportions. So one way to think about it, it's this virus of the mind, like a mind parasite. And a way to think about that, think about when you get a tapeworm in your system, and the tapeworm will secrete chemicals such that you start craving food that feeds the tapeworm so that it grows bigger and it eventually kills the host, which is you. That's like Wetiko, where it's a shape-shifting bug that will assume your form. It will put you on like a suit of clothes, but also putting you on, meaning fooling you in such a way that you will then unwittingly, if you don't see the way it operates, you will identify with its thought forms. And then all of a sudden you become its instrument and you're actually its servant. And, and then it can actually possess a person so fully that they don't even know what's happening. They think they're just totally in their right mind and never feeling more themselves. And all the while they're a portal for this higher dimensional bug to be like actually incarnating its malevolent agenda in our third dimensional world.
We're living in a country right now where we are shredding the Constitution. We are destroying civil rights. We're doing all of these horrible things to ourselves, and yet we want so badly to share it with other people, and we'll do it forcefully. That is where I think that we need to stop and say, this is madness here. Yeah. Because we're not taking care of our own home, but yet we're saying, come join us. We've never had it so good. Or we're going in and saying, you're going to join us whether you like it or not, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, there's when you really inquire into the deeper dynamic of that process, it's total insanity, because in other words, we're like, killing people to bring democracy or using force to bring democracy. You see, the thing is what's playing out in the body politic of the planet, in the world, is an actual reflection of the psychic disease that I'm calling Wetiko.
Right.
So one of the ways of seeing it is understanding, wow, there's a synchronistic correlation between what's actually playing out in the seemingly outer world and what's going on inside of our soul. And that's a description of a dream, because when you think about what is a dream is a projection of the mind. that what's happening in the dream is an actual expression of what's happening inside the dreamer. So that's what I mean when I say that encoded in this virulence of Wetiko is actually this blessing that can help us to see the dreamlike nature and actually help us to wake up. And what I'm pointing at is that, it's not just when one person sees it, when more and more of us see it, we can connect with each other and put our lucidity together and actually really make a positive difference in the world. And that's what's available to us.
We're stuck because of the fact that we're told that we have to keep on being angry. The war merchants want to make money off of our anger.
Yeah, totally. Fanning the flames of just the anger. And as long as there's an other, you see, the thing about when you see this as a dream, one of the things that means in a dream, when you wake up in that dream, you recognize that everybody is your dream character, which means they're actually embodied reflections of parts of yourself, which cuts through the separate self. And all of a sudden, there is no other. And the energetic expression of that realization is compassion. And compassion is the Wetiko dissolver par excellence.
That's what I'm thinking, compassion and empathy. We don't have it anymore, really. We've lost it. And another thing, too, wouldn't Wetiko be sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy? Because for the longest time, we were all worried that we were, we were being persecuted against, hunted, looked after in someone's eyesight, whether it be the communists or the aliens or something that's going to come and get us, some boogeyman that's going to be knocking at the door. And then when the boogeyman did knock at the door and we had a face that we put up on TV all the time, we were going through that Emmanuel Goldstein type of thing, like in 1984, it just built and continued to feed that metaphoric monster. Kind of like, what was it? Little Shop of Horrors. They said, don't feed the plant because it just wants blood. Keep feeding the plant.
It's like we've created a Frankenstein monster and the monster has developed an autonomy that's out of our control and then it begins to eat us. So it's like our own creation is actually destroying ourselves. And so the idea that as long as there is some form of other, and we then, when there's other, there's fear. You see, in Wetiko, it feeds on the energy of fear. And that's why the powers that be, who are like actually possessed by Wetiko in a certain way, they're continually fanning the flames of fear because then that actually keeps us under the spell of fear and there's other and shadow projection and then they more and more just, are assuming they're centralizing control and power. And that whole experience is a reflection of how Wetiko works inside of our mind, that it colonizes our mind.
We go now to Clyde calling in from Texas, listening on XM 168. You're on Ground Zero with Paul Levy. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? It's a fascinating show you have tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm calling because the word Wetiko, I want to know what was the origin of that word, and I do believe you said it was something about the Indians, and I'm trying to figure out if they had that word, did they identify that with themselves, or did they classify them as another group of people, or did they have like a group consciousness, and in that group consciousness, that word did identify with them and their behavior?
Sure, yeah. So the word Wetiko, it's the Cree Indians, the Algonquin language, and also like maybe different tribes like the Ojibwe, they might call it Wendigo or Windigo. I'm not quite sure of the actual pronunciation, but it's all pointing at, like, in their mythology, the Wetiko or the Wendigo, they sort of visioned it as like sort of, because the winters were cold and food was scarce, that there was this sort of like this supernatural, almost like a boogeyman, like a monster that was really, kind of created in their imagination. But the point is, it was some being who was at one point a human being, but because they indulged in excess, they actually, became possessed by this spirit, this evil spirit of Wetiko. And so it was a way of symbolizing what potentially can happen to any of us when we just unrestrainably kind of indulge in our appetites or our passions. And they would typically be symbolized that the more this Wetiko monster ate, the greater its belly would sort of grow, in the sense that it would never get satiated. So it had it was insatiable. And so it was all symbolic of basically how I interpret that is that it's symbolizing an inner psychological process. And so what I've done in my book is take that sort of symbolic indigenous mythology and try to translate it into a modern idiom that's really speaking to and pointing at what's happening in current times with us.
what are y'all's ideas on what is the thing that's missing that pulls everybody together to really change the way that these things are happening? Because I'm really fascinated by everything that y'all are saying. And I would love to hear y'all, both of y'all.
Let him answer the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, one thing is that, the thing about prayer is that, even in the Bible, I think, doesn't Christ say, whatever you pray for, believe you already have it and it shall be yours? The idea being that if we're praying for something like in the future and we're thinking we're lacking it and we're hoping we're going to have it in the future, we're subtly suggesting to our subconscious our lack in the present moment. So it actually then is creating the very opposite of what we're wanting. And then the other thing about prayer is that if we can actually step out of our ego, the narcissistic self, and actually pray for what's best for the whole, so then we become a channel for like whatever can serve the whole, which is really serving ultimately ourselves, but that's to really be serving God. That's when we connect with that deeper power in us that's connected with God inside of us.
Very, very amazing that this is what we're talking about tonight. It is. It's a solution to a lot of things. Paul Levy's book is called Dispelling Wetiko, Breaking the Curse of Evil. You can go to awakeninthedream.com, awakeninthedream.com. More Ground Zero. Don't go away. Dr. Demento came by my office today. I had a chance to sit down and talk with him, and Wes, my videographer, just happened to be next door. I told him, pull out a camera, let's have a little chat with Dr. Demento about the songs that he played. Not only is he a guy who plays these novelty songs, but he's also a well-known music historian.
Late 1950s, and I realized right away that it was as exciting as rock and roll, but deeper. So that's what got me into blues. And
the song in question is the Ballad of the Green Berets. Are you familiar with that song?
Very familiar with it, yeah.
So Sergeant Barry Sadler,
yes.
He was the guy that did the song. Now, it was number one for 6 weeks on the charts.
Yeah.
Do you remember playing this song, and what was the overall feeling in the country?
I did not play it at that time myself.
You didn't?
No, I wasn't out on the air yet in 1966.
Okay, but you were
aware
of the song.
But I heard it. You couldn't escape it for a couple of months at least.
And being a younger guy at a classic rock station, I used to get annoyed when I would hear that song. And yeah, for those of you that don't know, some of my younger audience, I'll just play this for you. It's a pretty good song. I mean, for wartime.
Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, the brave men of the Green Beret, silver wings upon their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 win the Green Beret.
I mean, it's a classic song, don't get me wrong. I mean, with all the anti-war songs, how was it that this song made number one, do you think, in your opinion?
Well, it was patriotic, yeah. There was a lot of controversy over the war in those days. There were people who were very strongly against it, and there were people who were strongly for it, and then there were people that just felt it's what this country is doing. I'm American, right or wrong. We'll stand up for America. And so you had a lot of people who were potential audiences for this song. It's stirring. It's set to a march beat. It's been a while since a march has been number one on the charts, but that's a perfect march beat to it.
Well, Barry Sadler actually, after he did this song, he tried to be a country singer, and it kind of failed miserably. I was just curious because I knew that as I was reading and doing some investigation into the song, that perhaps one of the reasons why it was number one, not just because of the fact that it was a patriotic song, when it was being played amongst the, We Got to Get Out of This Place by Eric Burdon or Barry McGuire's Eve of Destruction, but it also was bought up. The Pentagon bought a bunch of these, and they distributed them to radio stations. Do you think that made a difference as to why it was number one for 6 weeks on the charts or 5 weeks?
Couldn't have hurt.
Is that how it's done, though?
Well, yeah. Billboard counts radio play along with sales, or at least they did in those days. And, And but it sold lots of copies too, one of which somebody bought and kept for a while, and then it found its way to a used record shop where you got it for a quarter. There was a time when top 40 stations routinely played novelty records at any given time, roughly from the beginning of top 40 up till the mid-60s. At any given time, there would usually be at least one novelty record on the charts. So that meant that the top 40 station would play it every 2, 3, 4 hours. But then that kind of thudded to a halt right around the time the Ballad of Green Berets came out. After 67, there are fewer novelty hits. There are different reasons for that. One of them is that rock and roll in general started taking itself more seriously. You had the Beatles going from I Want to Hold Your Hand to Abbey Road. You had bands like Pink Floyd coming on. Pink Floyd is wonderful, but they're dead serious.
And I thought, how could a pro-war song be so popular when, it turned into this, time where we're listening to The Eve of Destruction by Barry McGuire, and the production wasn't all that great. The message was kind of off, but then I realized, well, it came out in 66. It was number one for a few weeks. Hundreds of anti-war protest songs created during the 60s as well, and, well, pro-Vietnam War songs were few and far between, and especially a song that patriotic. I mean, Barry Sadler's Ballad of the Green Berets was the most successful song of this type because it topped the American singles charts for 5 weeks in 1966. The album, called The Ballad of the Green Berets, would be one of the fastest selling in the RCA label's history, at the time reaching the million mark within the first month of its release. However, the popular press will tell you that Sadler made the song that he made the song and he made it work on his own merits, that he was a talented guy, but you figure out that later on he tried to be a country singer and failed miserably at it. I mean, this pro-war hit song was released. He got a lot of kudos for it, but he wasn't very successful as a singer on his own. And then you find out what really happened, why it was number one, is because the Pentagon and a bunch of corporate interests bought up the record. And so the military branch of the government bought up so many copies of the song, and pro-war columnists would write about it, extol the virtues of the song. It remained number one for 5 weeks, and it was also the theme song for John Wayne's Green Beret movie. I mean, Sadler had a very tragic life, of course, because, he served time in prison because he shot a guy, and then he moved to Guatemala City, and it was there that he was fatally shot in the head. He was in a taxi cab, took a blow to the head with a gun. And people say either he committed suicide in the back of this taxi, or that he shot himself accidentally, or that he was assassinated because he was arming the Contras. So there's a number of types of stuff about this guy that really don't add up to a number one single. It just, went downhill after that. So, sure, a lot of people bought the song, but you couldn't dance to it, and you couldn't play it at parties, and it wasn't one of those songs that say, hey, I want to go hear Barry Sadler's March of the Green Berets. You don't light up a sploof and listen to that song. It's just not something you do in the 60s. So I just was always curious as to why it was played. And then I realized why it was a number one song, because the Pentagon and a number of other control groups decided, hey, if we buy enough of these records, it'll wind up on the Billboard album charts at number one. And that is what happened. That's why that song was number one, because it was a propaganda piece that needed to get support for the war because it was falling apart during the time of President Johnson.
Getting back to Green Berets, you ever hear the Ballad of the Yellow Berets?
No.
That was a very early record by Bob Seger, who later, of course, went on to considerable fame as a rock and roll singer. But that's a political record, and it's about war protesters, and it's not very nice to them.
Didn't Seger get banned off of the Smothers Brothers because he tried to sing a song and CBS said, you're not going to sing this protest song? And
it might have been that song for all I know.
Okay. Yeah. So what are some of the best songs in the Funny Five now?
Well, a lot of new stuff. There's you don't necessarily hear it getting mass media exposure, but there are people who are very dedicatedly pursuing the path of doing funny music. Weird Al you hear about all the time, but there are lots of other people who do parodies and original songs too. There's all different styles. Nerdcore is pretty big right now, which is nerdcore is influenced partly by hip-hop, but it's all subjects that appeal to the kind of people who go to science fiction fan conventions, geeks and people like that, people who proudly call themselves geeks.
Take you to a galaxy far, far away. I'll move you with the force with my Jedi ways. Travel with my crew, hiding from Darth Vader. I got mad skills with my new lightsaber.
Well, Dr. Demento, it's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Same here.
You're one of my idols, and I thank you so much for all of your contributions to music, to popular music, to all the music that is funny and interesting, and I'm really glad that we had an opportunity to chat today.
Oh, me too. Don't forget to stay demented!
We know that the secret that has been drilled into our minds is that terrorists and even war veterans are a real threat now, according to Homeland Security. And once again, an entertaining television show that pushes that theme, well, it gets awards. People want to see that kind of stuff for some reason. They want to participate in it. Argo.
I got an idea. They're a Canadian film crew for a science fiction movie. I fly into Tehran. We all fly out together as a film crew. I need you to help me make a fake movie.
So you want to come to Hollywood and act like a big shot without actually doing anything?
Yeah.
You'll fit right in.
Ben Affleck won Best Movie and Best Director. And what this movie does is it glorifies the CIA, and Ben Affleck spoke with the highest praise for the CIA when he got the award. Best Actress went to Jessica Chastain of Zero Dark 30.
You really believe this story? Osama bin Laden?
Yeah.
What part convinced you? Her confidence.
If you're right, the whole world's gonna win in on this.
Now, that's a movie that I vilified and said, hey, don't go. It's been vilified for propagandizing the use of torture and rewriting history about Osama bin Laden. What this tells me, and what it tells us, what it should be a clue to everyone, is that the military-industrial intelligence complex is now playing a bigger role in our lives, which proves that the police state is something that, with gradual coercion, will be embraced by the American people as a normal part of life. Because I can promise you that there will be more movies produced with the blessing of the Pentagon and the intelligence apparatus that will demonstrate a new focus on the use of drone technology, gun control, spy work, you name it, illegal wiretapping, privacy issues, medical surveillance issues, eugenics, more focus on environmental crisis in films, the threat of extraterrestrials, which of course is another way to recruit young men and women for the military. It used to be the military would hate doing these films, but after Battle LA, that was a big recruitment for the Marines. So we must question now why we are now embracing the glory of the militarized police state, because this was the norm for communist countries and other countries that would parade missiles and military in the public square to show their might in the face of danger. We may not see this yet, but we are about to notice it, just how pervasive the extended war mentality is creeping into our entertainment. How easy is it now for the simulation to win out over the historic fact? As we question current events and the way they are presented, shouldn't we be a little bit more vigilant, aware of how Hollywood will most definitely generate fraudulent stories so they can pass them as reality?
Sir, my radar's totally down.
Prepare to fire. Sir, which weapons? All of them.
They're laughing at you. This is the propaganda they're pushing on you, and it's sending a message. It is a meme that is floating out there, and I think the question is valid. Do you think that having the CIA and military intelligence being so pervasive in films and TV and radio, do you think that's a healthy thing for a country? Because I remember when I was a kid, I used to think that the communists and the Nazis and all these people, they had the military industrial complex as their way of life. That's why all the guys wore uniforms. That's why all we ever saw were the goose-stepping goons that would follow Brezhnev. I mean, these were the things I saw when I was a kid and thought, I don't want my country to be that way. But now we're becoming that country. People always ask me, well, how do we fight the New World Order, Clyde? Well, here's one way to fight the New World Order. And that is not to support blatant rewrites of history in movies like Zero Dark 30. The question of how far the intelligence agencies will go to stage reality is anyone's guess, and many people are starting to question whether or not the stage show ends on the movie set. I want to point out a sick irony, and then I'm going to go to the calls. The movie Argo. You know what the movie Argo is about? It's about how the CIA is capable of setting up a phony film studio, hire fake actors and producers to make a phony science fiction film in Iran. This way, the real world can be fool the observers into thinking that they're witnessing a real event, all this for a political outcome. Think about that. They're setting up a phony studio. They're setting up fake actors and producers to create a phony scenario, or they're doing something that looks like it's real, but it's not real, just so they can fool people in the real world into believing they're there for another purpose. Now, how far-fetched is it to speculate now that all the events we've been seeing in the media lately have been staged or at least beefed up so the public can form a reaction that the directors want you to have for a political outcome? 9/11. It was pointed out just before we went to break. 9/11. What about that? We saw how it was handled. Sure, the event happened, but did it happen the way you thought it happened? To say it's an all-out hoax is kind of discrediting yourself. It wasn't a hoax, but it certainly had elements of Hollywood thrown in, much like Independence Day or any other movie, and all the predictive program you saw in The Matrix and all the other movies talking about September 11th, and then finally, we had Dean Haglund on this program talking about this, because Dean Haglund, of course, was the actor that was in The Lone Gunman. And the first pilot of The Lone Gunman showed a plane, a commercial airlines jet, being used to plow into the World Trade Center. And yet Condoleezza Rice and everybody else in intelligence said, we had no idea that a plane could be used as a weapon, even though in the time of President Clinton in the Olympics, they were worried that the Atlanta Games were going to have some sort of a plane crash or they had a no-fly zone over the Olympic Stadium at the time. But they lied to you and said they had no idea. And anymore, we see these types of things happen in movie theaters before they happen in real life. So someone is in the director's chair dictating these things, and then when we see something like Sandy Hook happen, we don't hear the direct story. We hear cover-ups. We hear that certain people died at certain times and how they had certain websites up 3 days before the deaths, and you hear all these things going on. You say to yourself, well, wait a minute, this is like some Hollywood film. How dare we criticize people who say, I don't get this? This is like something that the CIA has staged. It's like when they took Lee Harvey Oswald's head and put it on the body of the guy with 2 rifles and made it look real, and it was all faked. They question it because it just does not gel with what they're seeing. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, because we know that in most cases, in a lot of cases anymore today, the CIA is sitting in the director's chair, and they're going to be handed Oscars and Golden Globes and whatever other awards are out there that they can use as a cudgel to remind you that you support the military-industrial complex, the intelligence complex, the intelligence arm of the CIA, NSA, Homeland Security. You support this by going to these films, and then the Academy votes on them and gives them top honors. This is how pervasive it has become in our lives. And I don't think it's healthy, and I'm asking you, do you think it's healthy that this is going on? I mean, Argo is about the CIA setting up a phony scenario so that people will believe they're doing a film there. and yet we go after people and say they're sick and demented for even questioning 9/11 or questioning Aurora and why that Batman somehow plays a part in this whole scenario, connecting the dots with Newtown, Sandy Hook. And now here we are back at Sandy Hook again with what we reported last night, how reality falls apart and how we don't have, and we can't have with all this manufactured crises, a form of discernment. It's difficult to have now. Question reality. Always, always question reality. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back. Don't go away. There is a guy, and I talked with him tonight, Larry Overman, who is he's the owner now of this mine, right? And he went into this town called Sumter in Oregon that burnt down. Okay, this town has a very, very, very scary history behind it. It's kind of like the Silent Hill story. Whole town burns down, superstitious stuff, scary stuff. So this guy, he has this gold mine. He gets it, and he says, guess what? We're going to go in, and we're going to investigate this mine. We have Larry Overman and Patrick Doyle on the program tonight. So glad to have you guys here. Welcome to Ground Zero.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
And so we've been getting the audience involved, talking about their experiences. You, Larry, I mean, you're a very courageous man, very ambitious man. You're looking for your gold there in Sumter. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, why you decided to go after this mine, and even though it had a reputation.
You know, when I first bought this mine, I didn't know about the reputation, so I got to start there. I had no idea what I was actually getting into. It was the lure of the gold and the thought of making it rich. And when I started researching the property, I asked the person that had it up for sale, said, can we get up there and take a look at it? He's like, well, yeah, it's under 18 feet of snow right now, so that's not going to happen. So
Right.
I went on a gut instinct and just bought it anyway, sight unseen.
Mm-hmm.
My first crew tramped out real quick. They quit, just told me we were stuck with it, and was trying to figure out what to do next. So when we hired the new crew to come up, I was like, how do I keep these guys comfortable, keep them at peace? So I researched and looked all over the place and found Patrick and Kristen and said, hey, guys, I need some help. Can you come on out and take a look?
So, Patrick, you knew about what exactly was happening here. You knew of the area. You knew of the superstition. What is the history of Sumter? What happened in Sumter, Oregon?
During the gold rush, it was almost considered to be Oregon's capital city.
Right.
There was so much gold coming out of that place. But in 1917, there was a mysterious fire that burned the entire town down, down to nothing. And currently, there's only like maybe 10 buildings standing. What really drew Kristen and I to this investigation was when Larry told us that his old crew tramped out, and that this was an 80-year-old mine. It's never been. This is the first time it's been opened, so that kind of like got us to questioning if it scares these big burly miners out. What's going on up there?
Did you see anything yourself prior to the tramping out, or did you have you experienced anything prior to that maybe gave you an indication that this is something that you wanted to get and investigate further?
You know, we've always heard, you know, since I'd been up there, we'd heard voices. The closest thing that I'd ever experienced was just like, it's ice cold. And then in a moment's notice, it's hot. I mean, like men working around you, hot. But then you take one step back and it's 50 degrees.
So you're seeing the cold spots, the heated spots. You hear voices. Are they voices of men, voices of children, voices of women? What do you got?
The voices that we have heard were of men, and there's been several times where, you know, my wife and myself were back in there, you know, looking for the next spot and working with some of the guys, trying to figure out where we're going to go next. And you'll hear people talking, and you're like, okay, who's here now? And you walk all the way outside a half a mile, and there's nobody there.
We couldn't step on the property. We couldn't step on Larry's property without having this training. Because he'd get in trouble for that, and we didn't want that to happen. And you said that people have been in ghost mines, and they've been in mines before, but never at this depth and at this height and at this level. I don't think it's ever been in a gold mine, a working gold mine has ever been investigated. Sure, people have stepped inside and like seen shadows and stuff like that, but we wanted this to be a true investigation, a legal investigation, and actually make sure this mine was safe for the miners going in there, because it's odd that the past crew just tramped out. That doesn't make any sense to us. So
it was 80 men, right? How many men tramped out on you?
We had 8 guys up there, and a couple of them were very close friends of mine. You know, Casey, great guy, and Brian were, you know, great guys. You know, Casey is an ex-Marine. You know, I think he's about 6'4", close to 300 pounds. I mean, he's a big, burly, just a massive man. And for him to basically tell me to take the mine and stick it somewhere, he's out of there.
Up your shaft.
Exactly. So it's like, yeah.
When we're facing these miners, it's not like your typical investigation. We were welcomed by Larry, but we weren't welcomed by the miners. We were basically in their way, and I'm sure Larry will agree with that. But so when we're presenting evidence to these miners, it was with a lot of doubt. There was some cursing. It was like, let's just get back to the gold. and stay out of our way, please.
Mm-hmm.
And please wasn't really thrown in there. It was more of a curse word.
Mm-hmm.
But
so you did have swearing ghosts.
No, this was swearing.
Swearing
live
miners.
Live miners.
Well, I mean, did you get EVP of some of the ghosts that were there?
I guess. Oh, yes. And people watching the episode now, it's like you'll hear some really interesting noises that we captured in the mine.
Uh-huh.
So.
Okay. And so, now I want to also, and I brought this up with Larry and everybody else, but I want to know, Kristen, your assistant.
Yes.
Well, the superstition behind a woman at a mine is back in the day, women only came to the mines to identify bodies. So when you add a redhead to that mix, the redhead was a sign of, the evil, demonic, and I don't even remember which.
The Cornish people.
The Cornish people. So it was evil and demonic. So to have that redheaded woman, so now you have an evil, demonic, somebody trying to identify a body coming up there, was just a bad mix for the guys. And as everybody's going to see or has seen in the first episode, a very good miner decided he wasn't going to be there.
So he backed off.
He tramped out and was a major asset, and it was a major blow to the crew.
So these superstitions don't die, do they? They die hard.
Not at all. It's like these old timers. They tell us that, I'm not superstitious, but I guess I am, because the guy who tramped out, he listened to the Tommyknockers, and he blamed it on Kristen, I believe.
Wow. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, when you mention Tommyknockers, is the first thing they think of. But yeah, I mean, it does have a rich history for the miners. And I mean, there are a lot of other things that miners. Do you guys still do the canaries thing where the canaries die before you get in there? Or is that something that's a superstition and not real?
Well, no, they don't really need to do that anymore, especially with our crew. We have Jamal, and we figured he has the smallest lungs, so we were going to lead him in first.
Okay.
But in all reality, we have electronic devices that measure air quality, and we did use those.
Okay. We've got Jay Verberg and Jamal Eli, who's with us. We heard how it all began. Now we hear it firsthand from the guys who joined up, got involved, and now they're the ones that we're going to hear the real stories, the real scary stuff. Yeah, Jamal's got a lot of them, I'm sure. I mean, it's true. I mean, they always put him in front.
Yeah, you kind of have to. Being a little guy, they got to stick him up front.
Larry was saying it's because he has small lungs, and that if he was to pass out and die, then they'd know not to go in the mine.
But, yeah, he's got a big heart, though.
Was he telling this canary story?
Well, he was saying you're the canary. You were the guy that they were going to send forward. God. I mean, you were like you're like the meat shield. That's what Wes Bigfoot over here says, that he calls himself whenever they send him in, they call him the meat shield because he's so big.
I like it.
Yeah.
That works for me.
So can we put that on the credits?
Absolutely.
When Ghost Mine runs, they say, Jamal, Meat Shield.
The little meat shield.
They in mining, you have to earn your nickname, and I think that's a good one.
No, that is not a good one. Stan will be the judge of that.
Okay.
So who throws out the nickname? Do you have a nickname, Joel? Do you have a nickname?
Well, I kind of gave myself a nickname, which was kind of... I don't know if that made it on the show.
You never give yourself...
No, that's exactly
You
it.
never give yourself a nickname.
You can't give yourself a
nickname.
nickname.
No, you don't.
Well,
that's not cool. It's
I know. That's what
I'm
they
going to call
said.
myself this. And I was like going, why would you do that? We call you your nickname. We dub thee Meat Shield.
Dub thee Meat Shield.
We hand the torch from Bigfoot over here to you, Jamal. And we call you the Meat Shield of Ghost Mine.
Well, I just named myself Jammer because that's what my grandpa always
I
called
like
me.
Jammer, too. Isn't that good?
Yeah, no.
Jamal,
no,
Jam-
Meat Shield is better.
Meat Shield. And you know what's going to happen, Jamal? Meat Shield will be a spin-off series on the Sci-Fi Channel. I think. Don't you think?
Meat Shield!
Have like, those black women in the bell-bottoms going, Meat Shield!
Oh, yeah.
Gosh. The 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, we're kicking this off in a fun way, but these guys are great guys, and I had a chance to talk with them earlier. It's, of course, Jay Verberg, computer programmer. You're away from your family to go do this mine thing. What's up with you?
I have no idea. You know what? I've always had a big passion for ghost towns and the old history of the Old West, because you know what? Someday these towns aren't even going to be around. You go visit some of these places, and they're dilapidated. They're falling apart. There's almost no remains. So, the wife and kids, we'd travel around Oregon, Idaho, California, and investigate these old ghost towns. So I've always had a big passion for that.
Mm-hmm.
And when the opportunity came up, I was introduced to Larry, and they said, he's looking for a greenhorn, and being 40 years old and trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, I said, hey, you know what? I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd be interested. So I got to live out a little bit of, I got to start over, so to speak, and show my kids that it's never too late to start over. And then I also got to follow a little bit of my passion by doing that.
Right. And so, Jamal, you get thrown into this situation. What's your background? What was it that you did before you had to do this mine stuff?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me because I am a fan of yours.
Thank you.
My buddy James Stark got me into this, and he watched it from high school, and I just got to say thank you for having us.
Oh, sure. Thank him.
From high school, man.
So
I didn't
glad.
realize you were that old.
I've been around 17 years. I started on a rock station in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I came here, and in fact, John, the guy who was your sponsor, John Holmes, was my boss at one time.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, so there you go. So he was my boss. So
world. That's
it is a small world. We have all these connections, and I'm like going, it was like old home. I was like, hey, everybody. So your background, I mean, I know, what was it that you did before you became this greenhorn miner?
Well, I met the mine owner, Larry, through a mutual friend, and I can pretty much fix anything. I can give me a wad of gum and a paper clip, and I'll fix something for you.
So you're not only Meat Shield, but you're MacGyver Meat Shield.
That's funny. That's what a lot of the guys
And he's
call
also
me.
cooking.
You are the cook, too.
I am a cook.
Where did you get the cook background?
Well, I cooked right out of high school, prepping, around the Portland area, and just cooked, and I mean, probably about 11 years of cooking experience.
What's your best dish?
I would have to say chicken parmesan.
It's not pancakes.
No, yeah.
What, he makes bad pancakes?
Oh,
that was kind of the running joke around.
Really fluffy.
Yeah.
Fluffy pancakes. So you do chicken. He did chicken parmesan for you guys?
No, not even. In fact, one night he barbecued me an entire half chicken with leg, wing, neck, and everything.
And feathers.
Pretty much.
That's how it came in the package. I swear I didn't do that on purpose. It was the funniest thing ever.
So do you have to pack all that stuff into the mine? I mean, if you're the cook, you have to pack that stuff, don't you? You were saying that you had to pack hose, you had to pack all this other stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the trek up to the mine, first of all, I mean, the first time I went up there, it was unbelievable because it's such a treacherous road, and it's a job getting there in itself. But, I mean, when you have to pack all this stuff and bring all the equipment, and it's something to be, not taken lightly.
Yeah, you got to bring your water, and everything's brought up.
So everything has to be planned.
Yep.
And you have to use a lot of discipline, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't eat too much, drink too much. You got to be able to plan this because if you run out, that's it.
I think we were bathing in muddy muck mine runoff every night.
And I want it to be known all across the nation that Jay would boil his water before he took a shower.
That's right. Safety first.
Sure. Because I was about to ask you about that. I mean, how does one, and I didn't ask this before, and I think this is a whole new world we're opening up.
Yeah.
How does one prepare themselves for what might be in the mine? Because you've heard these horror stories about how, miners pick up on these diseases that may be buried inside the earth. And, how does one protect themselves, especially when it comes to eating? I mean, you guys get sick up there when you were doing the mine stuff? Or
No, with everything we brought up. And, we kind of prepped for everything that we could possibly think of. But we did our best to keep as clean as we could, and just take care of ourselves.
Yeah, I think that was actually the healthiest I've ever been in my life.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. Well, the altitude, we were almost at 8,000 feet.
Yeah.
So just walking around, I was losing weight.
Yeah.
Which kind of stinks because I'm trying to work up to wrestling weight.
Oh, you're telling me that got my butt up there packing stuff around, I'd lose a lot of weight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got to put me on a diet. I go work in the mine. That's what I need to do. You guys are the guys that stuck around. You guys are the guys that stuck with Larry and are behind Larry 100%. You guys are good guys. And this TV show and all this stuff. Number of things to ask you. One, I know that you were into the ghost town stuff.
Yes, that's correct.
Studying it and everything else. Now, were you like into the ghost thing? Did you know anything about ghosts? I mean, what was the whole thing with you and the ghosts?
I mean, I wasn't into the ghosts or the paranormal aspect of it at all. I was actually drawn to it for providing for my family and being able to. Yeah, money as well. Absolutely.
Ka-ching!
Absolutely. Gold. There's gold in that meals. But yeah, I mean, I had a couple things that were paranormal happen to me. I had a spirit that kept sitting on my chest.
This is all prior to the show, though. Right?
Oh yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with the show.
Another succubus story.
It was a succubus that would not let me up, and I mean, my eyes were open, and I could almost sit up. I could look around, and it happened, quite frequently throughout this 1 month of my life, and until the day I think I grabbed the bull by the horns, and I just said, when you leave me alone, or when I die, I'm gonna come back and find you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna find you wherever you are, because on Earth here and in our mortal shells, Jay's ginormous, and I'm kind of small stature, and I mean in a battle, David and Goliath maybe if I could hit him with a rock, but obviously he's gonna smash me.
I like the whole vengeful attitude as a ghost that you would have. If you die, you will have this vengeful. I mean, I was talking earlier about character judgments of ghosts. And so you would be a vengeful ghost.
Well, he was whatever this entity was frightening me, and I knew it was not good.
Right.
And it made me extremely upset, and it really, happened. So I figured, in the afterlife, probably we're pretty much a level playing field.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to try to combat Sylvester Stallone.
Well, I know that what I want to do when I die is, if my spirit carries on, if I go to a place like heaven or hell or wherever I go, whoever the person in charge would be, Satan or God, I'm going to go up and I'm going to say, hey, I want Ouija board duty.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that be the greatest thing? I mean, you show up at like parties and these teenagers are playing with the Ouija board and you scare the holy hell out of them.
And you find the one kid who's on the verge of wetting himself.
Oh, yeah. And you just keep going and keep poking. That's what I want to do.
Oh, no.
Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't Ouija board duty be the coolest job?
In the afterlife, let's hook up, dude.
I think we should. All of us will plot. and they'll be going along the Ouija board and go, tell me my future. And it'll spell out MEATSUIT.
Oh, no.
Meat suits on the Ouija board.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what's going on. So, okay, so you had this experience when you were a kid. But did they tell you beforehand that you were going to be working in a mine that was haunted? I mean, they didn't say that?
No. We went up there specifically to find gold, to provide for our families and hopefully hit it big.
Right.
That's what we wanted. That was our incentive.
Right. And so how did anyone figure out that this was going to be a huge, cool topic for the Sci-Fi Channel?
I have no idea how that came about, because when we went up there, I heard tell that the last crew completely took off for reasons unknown, and I'm like, well...
So they didn't really tell you why they took off?
No, I thought, well, they just couldn't handle it. It was too cold, or, they're wieners or something.
Yeah.
But that turned out not to be the case at all.
Right. And so it was something a lot more frightening. And Larry didn't even know that the mine was haunted. He just wanted the gold, and that's what happened. And then
what
was the first real indication for you that was haunted?
Again, I don't want to give anything away from the episodes, but
so this goes right from the beginning.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and
it really did start right from the beginning.
So this is raw, really raw. I didn't realize that, because most people, they would say, "Well, I can talk about my experience," but this is really raw. Uncut. They're just like, this is your experience right here, and it's being seen by millions of people all over the country.
And there's a lot to be said for your the powers of your mind and what that does to you when you're back in a dark hole. But your mind starts to get away from you. But when you can't shut that off or find a solution to what's going on, that's when it starts to really bother you.
And the thing that bothers me, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, cramped quarters. My God, think about it. You guys are just down. How far down do you go? How far deep are we getting here?
Gosh.
Any idea?
At least 2 miles.
2 miles?
No, it wasn't that deep.
About 1.5 miles.
All I know is when you're back there 15, 20 minutes of walking to get back there. Now, Jamal, he had a little bit more room to float through.
I moved through there like magic. I didn't have to worry about my head.
I'm ducking and hitting my head on every rock that I pass.
Right, because you're tall.
Yeah, and so you're 15, 20 minutes back in this mine, and you start hearing things. Now, and you do hear a lot of things just working there. You hear the water, you hear the mud, but when you start hearing things that don't sound like mud and water, you quickly realize, oh gosh, I've got 15, 20 minutes of walking back in complete darkness, and a little bit of panic kind of sets in.
I can imagine. Yeah, because I mean that's the thing is you can't. Like I said, I went into a tunnel investigation. I went with Northwest Coast Recon, Roger Cluton. We were down underground in this tunnel, and I thought, oh, this is cool, going through the tunnel. It wasn't going deep like in a mine like you guys did, because I mean, that's even more scary. This was just a tunnel underground, but it did get smaller because for some reason, I guess the workers that were in there, because it was mostly pipe and electricity and all that stuff, and it was for an abandoned mental hospital.
Yeah.
Going underneath, and you're like thinking to yourself, oh, this is cool, and you have to duck, and you have to crawl under these things that are like obstacles. But then all of a sudden you hear something weird, and you're like going, I can't run back.
No.
I have to stay here and let this scare me. And you really can't, because you realize, my God, did I really walk that far? And have I really been in this underground thing for 10, 20 minutes?
Right.
And you just can't go back. And you have to just kind of like stand there and wait for it to stop. And even then, you want to run, but you got cramped quarters. I mean, for me, this is a little place. I'm a wide guy, because I'm big. And I was like, my shoulder was just brushing up against the wires and brushing up against the wall, and I had to crawl down. And it wasn't until we got to this big open boiler room area where we were able to actually feel like we had room to breathe and otherwise, we had to go back, and it was back again, and climbing up ladders and all kinds of other stuff. And it's like, first of all, that's stressful. Yeah. Second of all, you've got the stress of knowing that behind you is a long way back. And then the stress of having whatever it is in front of you, it's just not.
Oh, yeah. And I'd say 90% of the time I hit my head, it was me leaving the mine. I was moving a little bit quicker.
That is funny.
And I was talking about the Cartoon Network, Meat Shield and J-Hole. It's kind of like SpongeBob SquarePants. You even have your own Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick.
Oh. I love purple.
What you doing?
I love purple.
That's fantastic. Patrick Doyle's with us. Also, Jamal, J-Hole, and Meat Shield.
You got a whole script.
It's the J-Hole.
It's the J-Hole and Meat Shield show. Well, Jay, Jamal, Patrick, thank you so much for being on the program tonight.
Thank you.
It was such a pleasure.
Awesome.
And I know here on the West Coast, we're going to be seeing it on the Sci-Fi Channel because it premieres on the West Coast in about 10 minutes,
That's
5
correct.
minutes.
Very
so,
nice.
So we'll be seeing
Shout
you
out
guys.
to all our other miners that can't be with us right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, thank you to all of them who taught us well.
And looking forward to J-Hole and Meat Shield with their sidekick Patrick coming with a spinoff.
Meat Shield.
Oh, yeah.
Meat Shield.
Theme song already, aren't you?
He's already signing the contracts, and you're involved, and you're involved, and we're all involved.
Glad I came
Anyway,
again.
thank you so much for being on the program. We'll be back with more. Keep it here on Ground Zero. In this hour, I'm very excited, super excited, because of who we have on as a guest tonight. I'll tell you what, if I were a science geek, and I am, and when I grow up, which I don't know if I ever will, I'd like to grow up and be Jake Ward. The guy is the coolest guy on the planet. I mean, he's the coolest science guy you'll ever see. I mean, you got Bill Nye and all these other guys, they're just the geeky guys, look like TV weathermen, everyone. Oh, this guy's cool. I mean, come on. I was watching a lot of his material over the weekend because I knew I was going to be interviewing him. Top Secret is the show that's going to be premiering tomorrow at 8 p.m. Pacific time, Eastern time on the National Geographic Channel. And this is part of Secret Access Week on National Geographic. And they want to get inside the world of black budget projects. Now, it was National Geographic, if you recall, that got in, and we had a number of guys come forward and talk about Area 51. We had guys on our show talking about Area 51 and what really goes on there. In fact, when people are asking the alien questions of Area 51, we kind of, went, okay, because it was getting a little bit into the secret stuff. They gave us some hints, nothing really concrete, but some hints. But now we move from Area 51 to other facilities that you start to see where these so-called UFOs and UAVs
are being tested. Palmdale, California, there's this corridor where they actually test these things. And now here he is going to Plant 42. And so we welcome Jake Ward to Ground Zero. Hey, Jake, how's it going?
Good, Clyde. Man, I deeply, deeply appreciate the intro. What nice words you've said.
Well, you're amazing, man. I tell you, I sit there and I say to myself, gosh, you just kind of like with a swagger, kind of walk into Plant 42,
Hi, good morning. Hi, Tanya. I'm Jake. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I was watching the preview.
I know it looks relaxed, right? I have to tell you though, it is not. I am actually I try to look cool and I wear a leather jacket and the whole deal, but
yeah.
Man, I'm the kind of guy who gets nervous when they tell you to turn off your cell phone on the plane. I snap it closed. I'm actually quite terrified of authority, and so a big chunk of that show was just me shaking in my boots because they are not messing around when they're protecting Plant 42.
See if I ever get those back again. Right now they're looking at my license and registration, and then we're going to get met by our escort in a second here. They've also told us that they're going to ask us to turn our cameras off many times.
And that with all those military and private companies, I'm sure they're all trying to impress each other with technologies that they're throwing out there, that they're testing. And some things we probably have no idea that they're involved with. In fact, we were talking about the drones early in the first hour, and people were talking about lasers and all kinds of other stuff. When you're there at Plant 42, what exactly would you say, how far advanced are we with the technology?
Well, I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. I would say that, military technology, if you think about the B-2 stealth bomber, which is one of the best-known things to have come out of Plant 42, that was built by Northrop Grumman in utter secrecy for the better part of 2 decades. They were developing that, for a long, long time without anybody knowing anything about it. And so you have to, assume, I think, that the stuff they're building there is at least a decade out. I mean, you're looking at, people recruiting some of the best minds from private industry, from, graduate programs, from whatever it is, and throwing, as I say, an incredible amount of off-the-books money. And, you've got these kids being recruited out of, Cal Poly and Stanford and MIT and so forth, being thrown into this kind of environment with pretty much unlimited funding being thrown at them. And they're really coming up with some pretty extraordinary stuff. Plus, and this is, again, to that sort of point of secrecy, they are competing against each other sometimes on the same contract. So you'll have, whoever the client is, the Navy or the Air Force or whichever branch of the military has opened up a contract, they'll give these individual contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, whatever, the same contract, unbeknownst to one another.
Right.
They don't even know if that's true. And then they duke it out, sort of in solitude, in parallel. And then, so not only do you have stuff being developed that's 10 years out, it's stuff being, there's multiple versions of it that's being developed 10 years out.
That's why I always tell my audience about secrets, and I say to them, there's more to it than whether or not the government's covering something up or whether or not, there's something else going on, the Men in Black, all that stuff, is because they want to keep the secrets within the companies and they want to keep it from the other companies. And there's this big, I guess you could say, tug of war and competition between the two until we have what we see in the skies and maybe even mistake for UFOs or what have you. So, Jake, you flew into restricted airspace. Where were you when you did that?
So we were trying to get a look at Plant 42 from the air because at the time we were being skunked basically on getting in the gates. Nobody was going to let us in.
Right.
And so we chartered a plane and basically asked the guy, will you take us overhead? And the airspace around Plant 42, which is in Palmdale, California, it's the Antelope Valley outside Los Angeles, the airspace is very, very interesting because it's this mishmash of civilian airliners that are taking off from LAX and are going to go across the country.
Right.
There's Edwards Air Force Base is right there, and then the airspace above Palmdale. And the research, there's a supersonic corridor in which they can do all kinds of crazy runs. And the question for us was, can we get a charter? There's a lot of private planes in the area to take us across the restricted airspace of Edwards Air Force Base and see what we could see.
And so what had happened? Did you get stopped? Did you get
wing down? What happened to you?
That's the edge of the restricted airspace.
Yeah, this lake bed here, that is Rosamond dry lake bed, and to the east of that is the 2515 boundary. You do not invade that airspace without permission.
It's kind of like that scene in Star Wars where they say, it's an old code. Should we let it pass? Yes,
That's right.
let it
That's
pass.
exactly what it was. That is literally what happened. He basically just you just ask politely, essentially, and say, "Hey, I'm just a little private plane. Do you mind if I, I'm a little Cessna or whatever. Do you mind if I just come in, close to the ground and just scoot across?" And evidently, private planes can do this every so often because it avoids having to go the long way around this enormous restricted airspace.
Mark is going to radio the tower within Edwards and ask for permission to cross restricted airspace. We'll see what they say.
Smart 2JZ is currently over Mojave. I was wondering if we could transit 2515 from our present position.
That's from Danville to 6000. 18 radio contact. The contracting order at 12 months.
All right. Wow. They let us in. He's given us a golden opportunity.
And the air traffic controller basically told him, yes, you've got permission. You just have to stick to this very specific line. And if you stray from this vector, you're in a lot of trouble. But yes, you can go ahead and go through. And so, by God, we flew over Plan 42. But I mean, it's terrifying to take a little prop plane into that space because literally, it's like taking a bicycle onto the freeway.
Because you don't know what you're up against. Not only are you on the freeway with this small, taking a bicycle on the freeway, you're taking that bicycle on the freeway, and you may wind up hitting up with a tank. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
It's like a freeway with tanks going up and down the road, right?
That's right, or caught in the wash of a big truck going by or whatever. Yeah, no, it's crazy. And they tell you specifically, and I don't speak air traffic control, so I don't know that lingo terribly well, but from what I can understand, if we change course, they're going to begin to talk to me as a whole different category of person. That's when they actually scramble a fighter jet, bring it up here, and suddenly we are in, bodily danger. And, they're fully within their rights to just shoot you down.
Of course, it's a national security thing as well. I mean, I think a lot of people probably wonder about national security. Of course, with the drone that was shot out over Israel, that exposed the idea that maybe their security is lax a little bit, and so they were able to apprehend the drone and bring it down, of course. But the truth is that somebody could get in there. They could really do some damage. They could even get a hold of secrets or ideas that they're not supposed to get a hold of. And those are the things I think we really need to pay attention to. And I think that's why I'm glad you had a pilot that was able to contact and talk with them, their talk. Otherwise, you may have not have been so lucky.
What gives me the creeps right now, or I would say at least raises a lot of very, very interesting questions, is the rise of true autonomous vehicles, right? Right now, we think quite a lot about, everyone's sort of talking about drones and Reapers and Predators, and everybody's sort of used to this notion that we have, which is amazing, right? Like even a few years ago, it was crazy to think that anybody was remotely piloting a weaponized platform from, around the globe, in real time. Like, and it's amazing to me that I'm now sitting on your show today and saying, oh, but that's just the past. That's old news. The new news and the thing that we were really, going inside Plant 42 on the show, what we really got out of it was seeing that the pilot, even a remote pilot, is no longer going to be the case. I mean, you're really going to be taking the pilot out of the loop going forward. And that, for me, raises all kinds of amazing sort of, just really complex ethical questions and strategic questions that I don't think anybody's really dealing with yet.
And Jake, I'm really glad you brought that up because that was the first thing I asked my audience before I brought you on was the idea of drones now. Are they moral? If you can call war moral, which I don't know if you can, but there is some morality to war, at least in the old days when war happened. We looked at the morality of war as being, look, the killer and the killed, or, the soldier against the soldier. Each one of them has to have a certain amount of courage to go out there and fight a war. Now we have machines doing it for us. And now you're saying, after going into this facility, that we're going to even be eliminating the human element of the idea. At first, the human element of pushing a button somewhere in these underground facilities or somewhere near Edwards or somewhere in Las Vegas or someplace, at first I thought was kind of a bad idea. But they're saying, oh, no, it saves a lot of lives. But then I was reading about the 30,000 unmanned drones that are going to be flying over the United States. Do you feel that this is a moral thing? Do you think this is, or do you think this is a bad thing?
Right now, we are at this turning point in history where we, as a nation, are one of the first nations to really, popularize and sort of populate our forces with drones as a matter of course. And so, you and I are in the very, comfortable, ethical position of discussing the ethics of this from the side of the people who have the drones, right? And we've only ever really seen them used against populations in, say, Afghanistan or Iraq or Pakistan, where no one on that side has that technology. When we start seeing those drones coming at us, that is not something that our armed forces have had to deal with yet. It's not something that we've had to think about yet as the general public. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's going to raise that ethical debate that you're raising is going to get even more fevered the first time that somebody tries to send a drone against our armed forces, or God forbid, against a civilian population, some DIY drone someday.
See, and that's the scary part, is that not only will we be seeing drones of our own patrolling the streets, monitoring how many lights you turn on and off with smart meters and all this other stuff that I was reading about. It's amazing. But then we'll have enemy drones that could come in and with no warning, they could shoot up an entire playground. And it could be done either by some guy with remote access somewhere in Europe or elsewhere, and we can't track it. It comes in and goes away so fast that we can't track it. And this is where I think it just becomes immoral, more immoral than it would if they brought in a plane, it flew in, and we had a chance of bringing it down. It's just a matter of can war just? I mean, is this really war, or is this just slaughter for like a video game? Would you say that this would be more or less like we're watching war turn into a video game, and we are the guys in the video game?
And, we're certainly getting to the place where the falling prices of technology and the rising sophistication of that technology is going to put that technology into the hands of many, many, many more people than used to be. And for whatever reason, I just choose to believe that the good sense of humankind is going to prevent all but the very craziest from doing anything like what you described. I think that there's a sensibility that humankind is going to have to sort of impose on itself about this stuff that I don't know that any government can control or any particular band of people can control. But I just have to assume and hope anyway that we're not going to see this turn into this kind of video game that you described.
Well, I just fear Skynet. To be honest, I fear Skynet, Terminator. I fear the drones programming themselves, or at least getting intelligence somehow in the system, and then saying, "Okay, we're gonna take over and shoot whatever we see."
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Then do it.
We've all seen that movie, right? And it ends badly. Like I kept saying that over and over again. We'd be standing next to some drone, and I'd ask the guy who created it. I'd say, "Man, did you see this movie? Like it ends really badly." Like,
let's pray to God this works.
Skynet defense system now activated.
We saw a drone that is fully capable of, you press a button and it'll wheel itself onto the runway, take off, fly a combat mission, and come back and land on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the night that's moving in the ocean and bucking up and down with the waves. And it can do all of that, including drop its munitions. It doesn't have to have a person involved. It does under military doctrine, but you don't, from a technical point of view, even need that. And what these guys are talking about then is flocks of these, swarms of these, a full, stick of these kinds of things, working in concert together, and so, I'm with you, man. I mean, Clyde, you are not wrong when you say, man, what if somebody hacks into that? Or what if the thing says, "Why am I taking orders from you?"
Oh, believe me, I got a lot of people who called me before saying that I'm totally wrong, that it saves a lot of soldiers' lives and all this other stuff. And I'm saying, but, look, just because we have the technology doesn't mean we have to use it. And what was war all about anyway? If we decide that we're going to throw a war, it's easy. Just throw a bunch of drones out there. No soldier has to get out there and get his hands dirty. What's the purpose of war if not to create heroes and to have men who protect the women and children? And I mean, I guess maybe I'm old-fashioned when it comes to war. I mean, I'm a pacifist, literally, but I mean, look, if we're going to fight wars and we're going to fight them, we do it well, and we do it with the most courageous men we have. We give them honor. We look at their valor, and we recognize it. You don't do that with a drone.
The National Security Agency just a few months ago revealed that, or basically handed over to NASA the equivalent of the Kepler, the space telescope that's designed to look for exoplanets that might be habitable in human life. And basically, it's the equivalent of the Kepler or even the Hubble. Basically, the magnification on it is incredible. Mm-hmm. And they revealed to NASA, "Hey, you know what? We've been working on this, and we don't need it. Would you like one?" And this is, NASA's, for the amount of money that they throw at the Hubble, is an incredible deal to be handed this thing. And so you're absolutely right. Yes, I think that there is, or I don't even know how you feel about it, but in my view, yes, there's certainly a lot of stuff goes into space that we don't know about. I think, though, that most of that has to do with observation. I think that there's very little space weaponry, kind of first strike capability kind of stuff. I think it's all about being able to see, who made the clothing label on the back of the jacket that somebody is wearing in Afghanistan somewhere.
Well, that we're not in violation of any treaties if we send up these gunships up in space, or whatever they may be, either gunships or we send up these platforms in space that have tungsten rods on them. They can drop on any city, and they can have the equivalent of a kiloton bomb when they hit. There's nothing in the treaty that says we can't put anything up there that may fall out of the sky and take out a city.
I mean, it's the same kind of thing as with people sort of when back in the day, people were talking quite a lot about a space plane that could deliver Marines anywhere on Earth instantaneously, and the treaties there are the same kind of thing. If you can get up high enough, you don't have to worry about anybody's airspace. Mm-hmm. You just go over the fence in essence, and come down and drop Marines anywhere you like. You're absolutely right that once you get up into space, kind of all bets are off. There's just nobody owns it. At a certain point.
Did you get a chance to see the X-47B?
So yes, that was the most amazing part, or one of the really amazing parts of doing this show is we got to see the X-47B get wheeled past us. And what's crazy about that thing, so for anybody who doesn't know that, for your listeners out there, the X-47B is a Northrop Grumman project. They first did the X-47A, which was a fully autonomous plane, and the X-47B is a fully autonomous plane that also has a weapons platform. It has the bay doors that can carry all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And what's crazy about that thing is you may have seen photos of it in our magazine. We ran a big feature on it in August. The size and muscularity of this thing, it is a scary, real deal, warcraft. And I had never really realized. I've always thought of drones as like little things, and this is a big, scary plane with no pilot inside.
Fully robotic and very scary, and from what I understand, it moves about 5 miles a second.
Yeah, it cranks, right? Those the Predators and the Reapers, you forget that they're prop driven. They're just little, they're very slow and small. But the boom, the big one there is, it's a full-on jet fighter.
Wow, some amazing stuff. I'm sure it's going to be great to see you tomorrow do this and be a part of this. I am fascinated. In fact, I'm really grateful that you had the opportunity to come on this program tonight.
Clyde, I really appreciate it. I was just, I'll be tweeting later that, man, it's like coming home. You and I should hang out more often.
Hey, I would love that. I would love to have you hang out with me. I love your style. I love how you do things. It's fantastic. Thank you. Have a great night. Good night.
Bye.